Hi there. This is the 29th episode of Effluvium. It's now happening Eastern Standard Time. That is New York City time. And we have a special edition where we have Chris from Scentland returning. And my co-pilot for this episode will be Alex the Perfume Temple. We're going to get things started by doing my usual 3 first impressions. Here is my sample scent from Acro. And this was graciously donated to me by Rachel. She will not be with us as she is still in the midst of transitioning from school to home. So I'm sure she'll be tuning in later. So I have 6 of them here. I will be doing 3 out of the 6. And the other 3 will be next week. Then after we do our 3 impressions, 3 first impressions, we will be having Chris and Alex joining us. If this is your first time here, tuning into Effluvium, please do click the like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification so that you are informed of future episodes, which are generally every week, Tuesdays. Sometimes we have some special editions as well. Sometimes I have full first impressions live streams. And of course, I do have videos as well. However, I can only crank those out an average of once a week. I envy those who are able to crank out 10 or more per week for about 500 a year, but I just don't have that kind of time or energy. I really wish that I did. So I just like to take whatever content that I do and put as much quality and information and heart into whatever I can do. All right, so we'll get this started. But first, I want to just check in with some folks who have started to come in. And hey, Dusan, good to see you. I love all of you. Much love to all of you. Hi, Kay. Great to see you. Miguel. Great to have folks from Spain tuned in. Hi, Not in the Know. And hey there, Keith. Hi, GMG. Buonasera. Filippo, hello. And it warms the cockles of my heart. Thank you very much. It's much appreciated. They do give me much joy. And this is a very important way of connecting with other people in the community. It means a lot to be able to have this kind of forum for content creators, reviewers, perfumers, writers, critics, all walks of life that happen to love perfume, where there's no gatekeeping allowed, there's no elitism. Everybody starts their journey somewhere, and we all celebrate something that we have in common here. So, and that is the joy of scent in its many forms. All right, we'll get started with Acro, and I guess I'll just go in order with what is actually in this canister. We'll start with the first one. I did no research, no homework on this. I only kind of know in passing what some of these are all about. So I'm going into this blindly. Don't have the notes pyramid. Don't have a breakdown. Don't even have ad copies. Nothing. Don't know the perfumers even. Haze. I like the sound of that name. Haze from Acro. Might I add that I'm not too crazy about the typeface, the Acro. You can see it right there. Kind of reminds me of like a 90s lifestyle magazine. Not feeling it, but that shouldn't dissuade me from trying fragrances from the house. Okay. Haze. Hey, Haze. Blind testing. Yes, Ricky Tomatoes. Blind testing. No notes in front of me. I've been doing that. I've been kind of experimenting with having notes and references. Yes, I have no expectations beyond what little I know about this house. I know that one's supposed to be really animalic and dirty. Another one's supposed to be very coffee centered, or another one's supposed to be very smoky, but that's as much as I really know. Mm. This, I am picking up on something that is what is called in perfume or fragrance science as thujonic. 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 The root of that word comes from the thuja, which is a type of evergreen. So if you are familiar with things like arbor vitae, the hedges, evergreen hedges that are grown in covering yards and or surrounding hedges, and are often so thuja is in that same family of evergreens, and they have a very distinct bitter aromatic herbal coniferous effect. Something else that's thujonic besides thuja oil is artemisia. So artemisia, specifically mugwort or armoise, and wormwood, Artemisia absinthium, what flavors absinthe. In this, the very first thing that I am receiving is a lot of wormwood, and I'm loving it. This is truly like wormwood oil to like the nth power. I am shocked because I kind of came into this house feeling like I'd be underwhelmed, but this, I would like to learn a little bit more about this, but this is very much an absinthe wormwood top, not even picking up anything else. And I have to say, I just love the smell of wormwood and absinthe. So that is Awake. Not Awake. Awake is a different one. Isn't that funny? I know that Awake is somewhere in here. This acro is actually Haze. Haze. But yes, thujonic. It hits that trigeminal nerve where it's, sort of invigorating. It stimulates. Yeah, I love wormwood. So far, I mean, this is just on the paper strip. And once again, I want to remind you that this only gives you a very small picture, if you will, or a small representation of what the fragrance is, because the evaporation rate on this paper is much slower than it would be if we were to put this directly on skin. So I'm really feeling that those top notes for a very extended period of time. And I would love it if these top notes lasted longer with that absinthe wormwood, because often that's a relatively fleeting top note. So we'll move on to the second one in this canister, the Acro canister. And this is Smoke. That leaves very little to the imagination now. So often people say that the standard bearer for smoky fragrances is Bois d'Ascès from Naomi Goodsir. So I often refer to that one, which I happen to don't have a full bottle of because, truth be told, I find them pleasant, very smoky scents, but they're not really my go-to. There's something missing from a lot of them that I feel there's a certain linearity, and that smokiness, if it's really pushed forward, it can be a bit overwhelming for me. But objectively speaking, I can appreciate it, even if I don't want to wear it on my own skin. So yeah, this to me is more of a cade wood than a birch tar. So we have two different types of oils. These are fractional distillations, or a destructive distillation, actually, of the wood that contributes to distilling the oil from these trees: birch tar; cade, a tree that's in the family that we also find juniper in that family. So cade is essentially a type of juniper, and it has its own tar. Here, I pick up more cade oil. And the difference between birch tar and cade oil is that birch tar has a tendency to feel a lot more campfire smoky, almost verging on, in isolation, kind of like smoked meat. Obviously, that isn't always the intended effect when using birch tar, because birch tar, when used as an accent, as sort of in trace amounts, is what gives a full leather accord. Birch tar is famously used in things like Chanel's Quip Lucy, for example. Cade, on the other hand, cade is much more of a scorched, burnt, like that smell when you know that when you go by a house that's burnt down. Charcoal. The wood has been rendered into charcoal. It is completely immolated. So that cade can cause that uber smoky smell. And that's what I pick up here. And I have to be honest, that's a tricky one, because if you're not careful as a perfumer when dosing cade, it overpowers everything else, and it can, to me, it can feel stifling. Here, that's really, it's very much cade wood smoke. It's a very conflagration, like burning house smell on the paper. But once again, it's only on the paper, slower evaporation rate. This could very well just be that first blast for the first 10, 20, 30 seconds, however long. But so far, that is quite profoundly smoky. Yeah, great name, smoke. It is smoke. All right, the third one. This is the third and the last first impression for this evening. We'll do the other three from the Acro canister next week. It is the Awake. This is the one that I knew of along with Smoke. This is supposed to be the coffee fragrance. So I do have a bit of background on this, only in so much as it is supposed to be a coffee forward fragrance. And coffee happens to be not one of my favorite notes in fragrance either. So this will be interesting. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your car. Instant coffee, man, those crystals. Ooh, yeah, this is like totally open up like a taster's choice. Put a few scoops in your mug. Instant coffee smelling. Ooh. And yeah. I'm noticing here, Prof. Melvin. Yeah, this is getting sweeter by the moment because we only have it on paper. It's getting sweeter. Ooh. And there's this sort of furanol. I'm sorry, guys, if I get too nerdy with the perfume materials, but homofuranol, I think it's called. It's been a while. I'm a little rusty. Haven't been dabbling with the perfume materials in a while, but damn. Yeah, this is a very sweet coffee grounds. It's kind of caramel-like, a little molasses-like. Yeah. I don't think I'd want to wear this. I don't really like the idea of literal coffee fragrances. I don't mind coffee as an accent, as a supporting note in a composition. But when the fragrance is high, I am a big vat of coffee being poured over your head. I don't know. Like, to me, coffee, I find it hard to see it as like a genuinely perfume compatible? No. But that is just my opinion. And I'm only one person. My opinion only matters, this much. So if you love coffee fragrances, check this out. Awake. Yeah. This will wake you up. If you don't have a cup of coffee, you put a little bit of this under your nose, and that will put a tiger in your tank. So out of the three, I'm going to go with the first one because I absolutely loved the opening wormwood note of haze. So I'm going to investigate that a little bit more and report back. So those were the first impressions for this week. 3 first impressions. Next week, I will do the other 3 that is in the Acro sample canister. Once again, Rachel, thank you very much for sending this to me. I owe you so very much. I'm grateful to have you in my life. That was great. All right, I'm going to check in with the chat a little bit more, and then we're going to bring in Alex and Chris. All right. Okay. And there's a little bit of response to the first impressions. Hi, Micah. Good to see you. Schwarzer Major. Great to see you too. Good evening. And Micah's scent of the evening, scent of the night is Lauder for Men. Margie, great to know that we are your soundtrack during your travels. And hi, Heinrich. Hello. And hey there, Drew Rose. Lovely to see you. The cardamom. Yeah, coffee and cardamom do go well together. I love putting cardamom in coffee, actually. That's the smoke one. Yeah. I'm picking up the cardamom. Definitely. Love that. I love that camphorous kind of top note to cardamom. Salutations back to you, Tripler. Very nice. And this one happens to be, and I'm assuming you are referring to Awake, Micah. Can't stand the coffee notes, can't help it. I don't know if I can say I can't stand them. They just don't excite me in perfume. In subtle amounts. I have to say, objectively speaking, because there's a difference between my taste and being able to assess a fragrance for what it is trying to convey. I'm actually pretty impressed with the coffee in that. So I will say that it's pretty impressive. You prefer a decaf coffee note, a decaf coffee note. And hi, Regis Moncton. You have the Discover set as well. Try Haze as your next one. Hey, Dave B. Lovely to see you. Yeah, I do sense that there is a realism. I like that liminal space between realism and surrealism. That's my favorite. That's my sweet spot. Sometimes realism excites me, and I'm always impressed when it's on point. And I will hand it to them. They put smoke in a bottle, and they put coffee in a bottle. And I think the one example of realism that I because I have a bias to it is I love the haze because I love wormwood and artemisia. Guys, please hit the like button, thumbs up. Also, there's my banner. Remember my banner? Buy me a coffee. Your support helps grows this channel. Not merely this channel. I finally fixed that after several weeks. Buy me a coffee. Buy me one, which is $5. Buy me more if you can. It helps support this channel. It helps grow the channel. And it ensures that we have even more exciting content in the future and to include some improvements as well. And also, it's just, I don't do this stuff for free, honestly. I love doing it, but I need the help just like all of us do, to make sure that we can keep these things afloat. So if you could buy a coffee, 1, 2, 3, or 10, I will definitely give you a shout out for that. Or because I do happen to be monetized. If you would prefer to, there's also super chats as well. I don't, I don't beg for them, but if it's okay if people ask for super chats. I'm not anti super chats. Some folks are outspoken when it comes to super chats, but some people make a livelihood out of it. And I just want to be clear that all the power to people who do have this as a full-time livelihood. You got to hand it to them. It's not easy. It's not easy to create consistent and entertaining content. So if you do enjoy this content, if you want me to highlight a topic during our discussion tonight, just send me a super chat, whatever you can afford, and it will make me a very happy boy. Thank you so much. All right, I think the time is now has now come for me to introduce the topic and then bring in my guests. Hey, PS. Okay, hi, boss. Sorry that we've never able to solve that mystery that I cannot see you in chats. Yes, please buy me an awake. Buy me not the bottle of Acro Awake. Buy me a little sippy sip, a little cup of Java, a little cup of Joe. All right. Okay, so our topic for this episode is dated fragrances. Fragrances that smell like to the perception of the wearer or to the smeller, they smell like they're out of step from the times. They don't smell contemporary. They smell like something maybe someone older might wear. It may smell like an old lady or an old man, or even worse, like a nursing home, because I've seen that a lot of times as well in discussions of classic fragrances that are not contemporary. But people are entitled to their descriptions, but that one is quite one. I've actually read one where it said it smelled like a hospice. Very nice. So we're going to talk about those, and we're going to dispel some notions of what is considered dated, out of date, old man, old lady smelling. We'll cover men's fragrances. We'll cover women's fragrances, and we'll get some of your input and feedback as well. Does that matter to you? Do you sense a difference in certain fragrances where they might seem to be better suited for somebody over the age of 50, 60, 80? We'll talk more about that, but let's first bring in Alex. He is my co-pilot for this evening. Hey there, Alex.
Hi everybody. Hi Jay. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you back. Are you excited for this discussion?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
I'm sure you have a lot of things lined up for it.
Oh, yeah.
And we're not going to keep Chris waiting much longer. Let's get things started. Hey, Chris.
Hi there, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Of course. As always, I'm glad to have you back here. So let's get this conversation started. I think that this is a topic that's ripe for discussion. I think some people are a bit more dismissive when it comes to this topic, but there aren't whole forums on it. And I think that all three of us love our classic, our vintage fragrances. So let's explore this a little bit. I'll start with you, Chris. Why do you think that people refer to fragrances that are out of time as old lady or old man? Tell me, give us a little bit of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because we come across this very often, and I think it's a very complex approach to what sort of feelings and images and emotions a smell or a particular fragrance triggers, and that's down to probably your personal experience of a hospice, for example, or a horse stable, or an old lady, or an old lady's handbag, or whatever these comparisons come from. But I think also that's a personal aspect that you can look at, a particular smell and its impact on the wearer or the person that smells it. And the other thing is fragrance, in my opinion, I think it's not only my opinion, but it's very much like fashion. So if you look at bell-bottom trousers, if you look at, long hair hippies, if you think that they're a product of their time, put it that way, or their clothing is a product of time, fragrances can move along that genre, or can be put in that basket as well. But interesting, what I think the most interesting is that why, and that would be probably a question for this panel and the guests and everybody who's watching, why is that there are some fragrances from the 70s and 80s that are in that category, yet they are still extremely popular, while others have completely gone and are forgotten. And I have lined up, and I'm sure you've lined up a good few examples of that. So how come that you, among all these new fragrances, you still see fragrances from the 50s, 60s, and 70s on the shelf in a normal Sephora or wherever you buy your fragrances today? And why are others totally? Is it just the smell? Is it our taste, or did these fragrances manage to hit a certain nerve that still continues after decades despite changing fashions? So that's something interesting maybe as well. But it's a very complex question.
Yeah, I agree. There's a bit to unpack when it comes to this, because I think that some elements of fragrance have stood the test of time, and other elements, if we're thinking in terms of notes and accords and styles, have not retained their sense of feeling modern, whatever that means.
Right. Yeah.
Jura Rose actually made a very astute comment here, actually, because I've noticed this as well. From my experience, the younger generation under 25s are more open to classic perfumes. Perhaps they view it as a new smell and don't hold any preconceptions. And the reason for why I think this is astute is because when with folks being that young, many of the people who are wearing fragrances that were in vogue through the 60s and 70s are baby boomers, and they're starting to age out, and a lot of people are getting older and they're passing away, so you're not smelling it nearly as much. Exactly. Would you be inclined to agree with that?
It's interesting, because I totally agree with that comment there, because I have a 11, 12-year-old daughter, and I show her fragrances on a regular basis that are, old vintage ones, and 80% of the time she actually does like the fragrance and the smell, and she doesn't think that it smells like grandma or is dated or whatever, because there's no bridge to the past in that way. So she cannot associate this with some old-fashioned whatever, because it's just a nice smell. So it's kind of a tabula rasa at that age, and whatever you smell, if it's nice, if you like it, if it's down your alley or your taste, you will actually like it, and not associate it with something that has impacted your brain in the past 30, 40 years, and then you associate it with that, right?
Right. Oh, we actually have somebody who was able to tune in for this Tuesday, and I'm thrilled that he is here. Thomas Early Greek, great to have you tuned in. We had him last autumn, and it was a great episode, and I hope that we can have him back again soon. Good to see you, Thomas. So, Alex.
Yes, I mostly agree with Chris with the comparison between fragrance and fashion, because we can't deny that they have gone hand in hand for so many years. And I think that as fashion items that have gone out of fashion, there are fashion items that are timeless. Think of a suit for a man. Think of a little black dress for a lady, the Givenchy one that Audrey Hepburn used to wear. There are items that will never go out of fashion, and so there are certain fragrances of certain fragrance genre. I mean, the Chypre, the Fougère, they will maybe change, be lighter or heavier in structure, but they will never go out of fashion. They are still made. While you have the, for example, as Chris was saying, the bell-booted jeans or or do you remember those horrible jumpers with the wooden buttons?
Oh God,
Here,
yeah.
yeah, they have gone out of fashion. Nobody wants to wear them nowadays. And as I've seen last week at Texans in Milan, the trend is changing. I mean, all the new releases are stepping away from that overdose of marshmallowy sweet ethyl maltol by the shovel kind of Baccarat Rouge or Stronger with You.
Rejoice on that.
Yeah,
That phase
and
is past.
there is. I've seen a resurgence of the tuberose note, maybe not as piercing as and as white. Let's say white to identify the classic tuberose smell. It's a greener tuberose, but always tuberose it is. So that's a return to a more classic style in fragrances, as I've seen recently. So, as everything in fashion, it goes by a wave. It comes, it goes, it comes back. So, fragrance goes hand in hand with fashion, I think.
And I really think that the last time that tuberose was such a big thing was in the 80s, when you had a lot of these floral, these opulent floral chypres that were marketed to ladies with that tuberose, and it would be supported by jasmine and plum, and it would just be so heady. And I love that stuff. And but yeah, going into almost 40 years, maybe we're returning to that. And I think we're also returning to green. I think green is, people are maybe leaning into green, grassy or leafy or aromatic scents more on hopefully, I mean, on a bit more of a mainstream level, because it'd be more pleasant to smell that than what we smell everywhere. So the question that I want to ask both of you, what do you think are the notes that people typically associate with being dated or old-fashioned smelling? Maybe they won't even realize that the note is in the fragrance, but what do you think conjures that up for? What notes do you think conjure that up for a lot of people? Chris, what do you think?
Well, definitely one of my favorite notes is, sadly always mostly being associated with smelling old mannish, is pine. Like pine it somehow always comes across, poor pine, as something that is, especially if it's a bit harsh, if it's not that well blended, it comes across as somehow something that is almost somehow repelling people from, trying to discover it any further. But also oak moss is probably something like that. Rose, a heavy rose, like I would think for a little, about stuff that is in Iquitos, where they really have rose, where we have a huge dash of oak moss in there, and that is something that is just hitting people in the wrong way, and many people cannot take these heavy notes. I mean, pine, rose, oak moss, honey can be. Some people say that Hugo Boss #1 smells like a pissoir, okay, because there's a heavy honey note in there, and that if they're very prominent in a fragrance, they can really come across as somehow something that is not really Yet at the same time, Hugo Boss #1 is still around, so that it might also create an affection in people. It's wicked, but I think these are some of the notes that come across as a bit too much sometimes to people.
Yes, pine definitely, and oak moss. I agree. Pine is returning as a tuberose. Pine is returning. To me also, the traditional masculine fragrance florals like carnation, like geranium, tend to smell. And on the feminine side, aldehydes are what can identify a fragrance as vintage smelling.
Jura Rose, I can see a research. Now, am I pronouncing that correctly, or is it Huro Rose? I want to make sure I'm pronouncing things correctly. Let me know in the comments there. I can see a resurgence of carnation, especially after the limits on isoeugenol acetate have relaxed. That has been one of the biggest concerns about having clove forward or carnation forward fragrances, because eugenol and its derivatives. There have been heavy restrictions in the past couple decades because concerns of possible carcinogens. We also see that as having an indirect impact on rose because of the eugenol impact. However, I digress. This development could perhaps see a resurgence of carnation, which just so happens to be one of my favorite notes, but also would be one of the notes that I would mention, like you said, Alex, that people may feel that it is kind of old-fashioned smelling, especially if it's very forward, because it is that very spicy, clovey, powdery kind of feel. One of them I have right here, this little classic. And does anybody recognize what this is here from the bottle? In the least, you can recognize the house, because this is a signature bottle for the house. You guys know?
Daniel?
So let's see if the comments, but Anton says carnation.
Yeah,
I wonder if people...
no?
There you go. There you go.
Yeah,
Nino Ricci. Very, yes, exactly. This is Nino Ricci, and this is Le Dauphine.
Oh, okay.
And Le Dauphine is one of the most famous carnation forward fragrances.
Yeah.
This would be a perfect example of something that would be considered dated today by many people. But I think it's quite exhilarating, and it is nostalgic to no end. Would it be possible to see a fragrance with this kind of composition today? Or do you think that there would have to be some changes to it today?
Probably some niche house would think that they produce something real kick-ass vintage smelling stuff. But in mainstream, no.
Yeah.
No, definitely not.
I think that in the mainstream, it would be a really hard sell. There would have to be a huge shift in the zeitgeist for people for your average, Jane or Joe to wear something so unabashedly crisp and powdery and floral as L'air du Temps. But carnation happens to be one of my favorite notes. You think Caron's Beloggia, Lorenzo Villoresi has a wonderful one, Garofano, Santa Maria Novella, Garofano. And for the men, and I don't have the bottle with me, go figure, but I hope that one of you guys do. What about Equipage? Equipage has the carnation. Yeah.
Lovely one. Yeah, it has a lovely one. Yeah, indeed.
Monsieur de Givenchy.
Monsieur de Givenchy, Monsieur Rochat. That's been discontinued for some time. And I think this is a good opportunity for us to just start talking about the fragrances that we have with us and just expound upon why they are considered to be dated, old lady, old man, what have you, and why you defer to that, or you have deference to that, why you're like, well, transcends that. Chris, I'm going to have you share the first one.
One that is still around, still being made since 1978, is one of my favorite fragrances, and one of the most misunderstood fragrances, I think, in the fragrance world is the ever-present, by now called Classic by Karl Lagerfeld from 1978. And the reason I say that it's misunderstood is that if you spray that out and you smell it straight away, it's not gonna really appeal to you, because it's again packed with tons of notes that are dated, smelling dated and old manish and just out of style or out of time somehow. Yet at the same time, if you are like in the old days, more patient, you take it 2 steps back, take it slow, let it become one with your body heat and skin chemistry, and let it breathe for an hour or two underneath the shirt. This is working absolute miracles, and it just becomes a total different fragrance compared to that you would spray straight on your skin and go. Like you have 30 seconds to buy a fragrance at the airport. You smelled it, you spray this on, you're gonna keel over because you're gonna say, how on earth is this still available? Okay, but it is, and it has this reason. So there seems to be some still some audience that knows and appreciates how to wear this and how to let it develop and shine. And then you have a 24-hour performance on this. And if you approach this with an open mind, I think this is still, and that's why it's still on the market. Yet at the same time, it absolutely at the start smells dated, but as it develops, I think as it gets to its fullest performance, it smells futuristic, in my opinion, because it's just so well constructed and so well done that is just it's absolutely beautiful. Lagerfeld classic. I adore this.
Keith mentions here, carnation and geranium together a bliss. Two of my favorite notes just happen to be carnation and geranium. I actually love crushing. It's the Latin name is Pelargonium graveolens. Pelargonium graveolens. You crush those leaves, and you just it's wonderful, marvelous stuff. Oh, Alex, you have your bottle.
There's a fragrance by Daniel.
Of course, I have
both of those notes. Check it out. I don't recall the name now, but it is a wonderful fragrance, and it has both carnation and geranium. I'm going to tell you the name a little bit later on.
I have a couple that I know that I have in my scent arsenal myself, and I can't think of what they are. But that combination, well, one of them, and I don't have the bottle right next to me, but Jean Couturier actually does Equipage. I think Equipage has both geranium and carnation, but I don't think the geranium is very forward on it.
No.
I think that we would start to see a lot more forward geranium maybe in the late 70s, early 80s. Yeah.
Actually, there is an Equipage geranium.
Oh, the Equipage geranium is gorgeous. Yeah. That is where the geranium is pushed forward. Wonderfully done by Jean-Claude Ellena. Great stuff. Alex, what is your pick?
My first pick is actually the oldest because I don't know what could be considered old smelling more than an 89 fragrance. Jiki. Jiki, also because at Texas there was an Osmotec stand, and I'm lucky enough to have the original Jiki. And I can tell you, the modern formulation is literally the same smell.
Ooh, brilliant.
Jiki hasn't changed.
You heard it here first, folks. I believe it.
And yes, maybe it's just a touch lighter, but the smell, the scent profile is that it doesn't change that much. And it's incredible how this was marketed to women. This is straight traditional fougere, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And fougères have all that kind of retro feel that can be considered either timeless or old. I consider them timeless. I love them mostly them all. And I think I can get that another note that is very much present. Basically, a compulsory note in fougere that can immediately smell squares lavender. Lavender.
Yeah.
And by the way, I smelled, you were talking last Thursday about Musk by Acampora.
Oh, yeah, Acampora Musk.
Yeah, I tried this last week, and to me has a strong lavender note. Very traditional soapy lavender note.
Yeah, and the lavender, there's almost like this, there's the fungal quality, like the mushroom at the top note, and I feel like it just seamlessly dries into that lavender, because actually lavender has some mushroomy aspects to it. It's usually not pushed in that direction in perfume, but I think that's a stroke of genius, how you have that kind of mushroomy feel at the top, very earthy, loamy, and it kind of dries into that lavender, and then the musk itself. Really enchanting stuff. Bruno and Campora.
And by the way, speaking with the owner, which is the daughter of the founder of Bruno Campora, there's a fun gossip fact that musk is actually Simon Le Bon's signature scent.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, just a side new, but it's nice to know. I mean, fun to know.
For those who don't know Simon Le Bon of Duran Duran,
they're not old enough, those guys.
Well, I was in kindergarten when they hit it big. I was at least alive.
No, we were in, me and Chris were in middle school, going to secondary school.
Very cool. That's a cool.
Yeah, we are all tossers, definitely. But if we talk about lavender, carnation, and geranium, there's one fragrance that you cannot overlook, and that's
Passion.
Passion by Elizabeth Taylor. It has all them notes, and they're blended so nice. I really love this juice. It's just, and the Art Deco bottle as well. And it's still around, this one from 1989 or 1991. I think the male version is 89. Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely stunning, and it brings those notes that we are just talking about, brings them together in a blend that is just so appealing. It has some cinnamon in there and some balsam fir and other stuff, some orange as well, probably patchouli. Just absolutely gorgeous, and still around again.
Yeah, and the current version still smells fantastic. Because it has always been a cheapie, and it always smelled slightly synthetic, but in a good way.
In a good way,
and that for us was the clubbing fragrance when there was no clubbing fragrances, because it had the tonka mixed with a touch of vanilla that gave it a slightly warm, slightly sweet base, and women went crazy for that.
I have myself on mute. I apologize for that. I just wanted to highlight this comment, an underutilized note in men's fragrances, particularly fruitiers, that I love. Ylang Ylang, most famously in Brut, and yet to be used in the same way. Ylang Ylang is, you don't find it very often in fragrances that are that have been marketed to men. And maybe there is a supporting note, but never really in the foreground. I do like the usage of Ylang Ylang, but I find that it's more prominent in fragrances that were marketed to women, most famously in the great synergy between the aliphatic aldehydes, the top aldehydes in Chanel's, the synergy between those aldehydes and Ylang Ylang, which I think is brilliant. But yeah, that's interesting to note. You don't find an Ylang Ylang note showing up terribly often.
Yeah, you don't.
Yeah, unless you're Chris and you have one at hand.
Julio Iglesias only, 1989. This one as well. Interestingly, this has a great Ylang Ylang note in it. This used to be one of my mother's favorite fragrances because she loved Julio Iglesias for one reason or another. Don't ask me why, but you know. But this has a great, wonderful Ylang Ylang note in it. And I actually love to smell this, but again, I have memory as attached. But for use of Ylang Ylang in a female fragrance, this is one of the ones that I know that is really, really delicate and prominent and extremely well blended.
That one, actually, Chris, I haven't experienced. Would you say that is somewhat difficult to obtain these days, or?
If you ask Anuj Patel from Enchanté Perfumes in Toronto, Canada, they have stuff. They have this still around. So as far as I could tell from their website, so it's still obtainable. But it's really, really beautiful. I mean, sometimes I even wear it on my hand and keep sniffing it. It's just so good. Like.
That does sound quite lovely. I've seemed to have overlooked that one for some reason. And Anuj, we love Anuj, a great supporter of the channel and of Effluvium. His website is actually in the description, so if you're not already familiar with him and his marketplace, check out his link in the description at enchanteperfumes.com. But Ylang Ylang, like as far as like in my collection fragrances that were marketed to men, I'm thinking I think maybe Paul Sebastian had an Ylang Ylang note, if I recall. P.S. Fine Cologne. But most of what I have were fragrances that were originally marketed to the ladies, including a few that I actually have at hand here. And one of them just so happens to be quite a controversial one for its time. And it is sitting right here in its obelisk form. Taboo. Dana Taboo.
Oh, yeah.
So does anyone in the chat know the history behind this? When it was formulated, what was the intention? What was the brief for Taboo? What were they? Who did they have in mind? What type of personality? Let's see if somebody in the chat knows. This is some gorgeous stuff, though. Still smells great in its current formulation. Smells fantastic in older formulations. And this is not going to set you back a terrible amount of money. This is not a rarity. So cheap and cheerful all the way. Kitschy K actually has another great one that would be considered dated or old lady today that I think is fabulous. And that's Bluegrass from Elizabeth Arden.
Yeah.
And she also loves the Female Passion from Elizabeth Arden.
Just
pretty similar.
Elizabeth
and I think
Elizabeth Taylor.
Yeah. Did I say a different? Who did I say?
Elizabeth Arden.
I said Elizabeth Arden again. I meant Elizabeth Taylor. She was talking about Elizabeth Arden Bluegrass as well. So I must have just said the name a second time. The Ylang and Roger and Gallet L'Homme is fantastic. Very nice. Wow. I'm just catching up with the chat to see if anybody. Oh, yes. Congratulations, Kay. Would you like to have a sample set? Check in with me and I'll send you a sample set. Just send me a message on Instagram and we'll get you set up with that. So yes, the oldest profession in the world, smelling fantastic. And this
we were talking about Ylang Ylang in men's fragrances. Well, guess what? I'm showing this now for the second time. Iquitos by Alain Delon has Ylang Ylang and it smells accordingly. Okay, so this is like a bomb, really. This is like, my God. But it has Ylang Ylang if you check it out.
I think also Salvatore Dali Laguna Puram has some Ylang Ylang.
So why don't we go into the pines, because I have a lot of pine forward fragrances sitting here. Alex, do you have one at hand, and then we'll go around?
No, but I think since pine was a traditional note in a whole genre of fragrances that is now considered vintage smelling, which are the 80s powerhouses, I brought just one to exemplify all the genre. Unfortunately, the only one without pine is Antaeus. But I mean, you can take Quorum, you can take Dior Joule, you can take Acqua di Selva, you can take Paco Rabanne Puram, I think is also pine, and all those fragrances from the 80s, Tsar, another pine forward fragrance, Polo. All those fragrances are now considered vintage smelling, probably because the note of pine mixed with the oak moss that gave that sort of very green, very fresh forest feel that now is coming back, but for many years has been considered vintage smelling.
Yeah, including this one for pine. Aramis Devon. This is the vintage or one of the older ones. This is boosting a quite heavy pine note, and it's country. It's called country cologne. Okay, so it actually boosts that in its marketing as well, but it definitely has that good old vintage pine, and that's why I love it. An absolute great outdoors gem there for you.
That is one of my favorites from the Aramis line. One of my favorites from Bernard Chant. And I actually did a video. It was one of my earlier videos where I do a comparison of an older bottle to a newer bottle, for which there are minimal differences to it. I would say with the older bottles, there is a bit more of a fixative quality from the more liberal usage of oak moss and a Castorian accord that probably just sort of hits you a little bit harder than the newer version. But the newer version is still fantastic. I noticed, Alex, you were holding up. Was that your own bottle or?
Aramis, the original one.
The original, yep. That's been known. There's actually a whole article on Fragrantica that lambasts Aramis. Like, is Aramis pointless these days? Should it even be in production because it's so dated and old? No lie. There's like a whole article on it, and it was not well received. There was a lot of backlash on it because there are a lot of people who still absolutely love Aramis, and it is a certified classic.
You know, which is another note that smells very vintage is tobacco when it's not covered with cherry, vanilla, or unnecessary sweetness.
Yeah, I agree.
Sweetness. For example, Trussardi inside.
Oh, that is one of the most beautiful fragrances ever. My God.
That reminds me slightly of another fragrance that you enabled me to buy, which has actually no tobacco note, but it smells like tobacco. Autokern Cycle.
Yeah, that's a good one. I actually learned of that one through Chris. Chris, he did a video of that not too long.
Beautiful fragrance. But pine with tobacco is also found in here. And this is a bomb. I mean, this still today, still around it. You can kill people in a room with that.
I had to bring up Keith's comment here. He was giving me a pro tip when playing the mention of fragrance that has insert note here game. It's good to keep Lapidus Porum handy since it has everything.
Yeah,
very funny. Yeah.
And another one which reminds me slightly of that is Kouros, of course, which has every possible note into it.
Yeah, that's a kitchen sink fragrance for sure. Duchamp, who thinks that Mozart is dated? Mozart, I mean, classical music kind of transcends, to me, much like fragrances do, transcends the notions of what is out of date. Spill the tea on that one. Who are you talking about here? Tell us. You opened up Pandora's box.
Yes, it's lack of culture, because if people had some education, they would know that without Mozart, you would have no Elton John, for example.
Oh yeah, you can delineate a lot of popular music from a few different things.
Yeah,
early black music, pretty much 85% of like rock and soul music and pop, but a lot of it also, jazz and classical music. Classical music had laid the foundation for a lot of music. So not to make this not to have this detour into a fully music conversation, but I know all three of us are huge music fans. But I just wanted to highlight a super chat from Danim. Thank you very much, my friend. What are your thoughts on Basile Uomo? I think that all three of us are familiar with that one, if I'm not mistaken. Chris, do you want to give your thoughts on that one?
Not my cup of tea, and I think they killed it. I had a recent one, and they just destroyed that fragrance.
Yeah.
Yes, but the original had one of my favorite notes, which is thyme, which was very, very, very prominent. And fortunately, I found an alternative, and it's fine. I'll show you. This is actually Filippo's bottle. I bought it for him. Aliorant Affogato, which is a modern take on Fougère, which has, for example, no woody base, no tonka bean. The woody part is taken by the vetiver, and it has a very prominent thyme note. Very herbal, very green, very nice.
And if you chance would just pardon me, because so many fragrances are being mentioned that I don't have within arm's reach, and now I feel a duty to grab them from back here. So just carry on with the discussion, and I'll be right back.
Yes, we were speaking about men's floral notes like geranium, carnation, rose, that can smell dated. I think no fragrance like Floris 89 expresses those notes better, together with a hefty dose of lavender, which was also mentioned, a woody base. This, to me, smells extremely gentlemanly in a very classic kind of way. So probably this could be considered one of those very retro style, very grandpa smelling fragrances.
Why don't I put you in close up so we can see the bottle?
Floris 89.
Oh, very nice.
See how much I used it. This is 100 ml.
We actually had one of our viewers mention Fleur Solide. Hello, Dunny. He mentioned a lead, another good one that perhaps would be considered dated by some people today. I think a lot of the classic florists would probably be considered dated. All of the earlier Penhaligons, all the earlier florists, those stuffy British fragrances that I love.
At the start of the 90s, so Givenchy actually taking a very brave step to the market, doing a Lily of the Valley Magnolia Iris fragrance called Insensé, if you remember this.
Yes.
Yellow Beauty, and it has some fir base, and it was just so nice, a bit of bergamot in there, but it's just such a brave, totally out of the context of the market context at the time, floor beauty. Unfortunately, at this point, this could go as a $300 niche fragrance because it's so well done, but it has been discontinued and has disappeared. So, we have to clinch onto our vintage bottles here. I think Magnolia is beautiful in this.
Yeah, I love that the combination between the coniferous resinous fir, that's, I think, a fir absolute is used in it. So it has this, I mean, we say piney, but not all the trees are actually botanical pine, but it has that same vibe, but it's also a little bit of a sweetness, and the way that interacts with like that the very floral heart, beautiful stuff. And another one that was released, maybe 13 years prior to, Nino Cerrucci, another stellar men's floral that has great. That coniferous sort of backbone to it too. Love that contrast. Gorgeous stuff. Alex, you were going to mention something. I'm sorry. I cut you off.
I think, I don't know if you agree, but in the 90s started a trend of spoiling the fragrances of so many notes. They became more skeletal, more centered maybe on one note, and not as complex as they were before. And probably the complexity in a fragrance, the large amount of notes, can be considered as a vintage theme, something vintage smelling, because, for example, if you take a modern fragrance like Acqua di Gio, modern, I mean, made from the 90s on, like Acqua di Gio or like Le Mal, you can immediately identify this main theme or the main note or two or three notes but try that with something like this.
Yeah.
Can you identify
Yes.
Can you identify what does it smell like?
L'eau de Forman, yeah.
It's a complexity. And by the way, this is curious because this was ahead of its time. This can be considered modern because it has lots of tonka, lots of cardamom, which are notes that cardamom has been used from 2000 on, like pine was used in the 80s. Every fragrance has a
Do you
cardamom.
know what I love about that is it has this juniper berry, and then I believe it's jasmine, but it's a floral accord, and the way that the two of them interact, it really is like sonorous. It's like it's very high pitched, but in like a pleasant way. Some people may call it pissy. But it doesn't literally smell like urine, but it's just something so punchy about it that I love. There's actually a woman's fragrance that could very well be mistaken as unisex from the early 90s, in 1990, Eau de Soir from Sicily. And I feel like that's a sibling to Lauder for Men because that also has that juniper berry at the top drying into these florals. I just love that combination. I'm just going to catch up with the chat a little bit, and then I'm going to just I'm going to take it back to you, Chris. But it looks like I'm a little behind with the chat. Crizio Olmo, awesome pine fragrance. Oh, Captain Molyneux. Yeah, this one isn't really discussed nearly as much, but Molyneux. This one is from the 70s. Molyneux is a great house. A lot of lesser known beauties from this house, like Quartz Molyneux and Quartz from Quartz en Molyneux. I also have another Molyneux, which is from the 60s, sitting right here, still in its box. This is Fête Molyneux, and it's a beautiful bottle. This is an aldehydic floral. With a lot of the aforementioned notes that we were discussing. Here's the bottle here, Fête Molyneux. This is a beautiful splash bottle. This definitely wouldn't smell modern at all, but oh God, it's gorgeous stuff. Let's continue to the chat a little bit. Esencia de Loewe, very nice. Yeah. One note, which I think smells old-fashioned, certain fragrances, mahogany. Interesting, because I hadn't really seen that note show up too much in fragrance until maybe at least the 90s, when they were kind of dabbling with like unusual notes. There's ethereal mahogany, long discontinued, and I think Comme des Garçons is the only other house where I recall they're having mahogany show up. But interesting. You don't see it pop up too often, but it's apparent in older fragrances and literally has an old furniture vibe. Hey there. Rudy, how's it going? Yes, what's up, Alex?
I wanted to just, since you mentioned Molyneux, tell a little story that can be interesting or fun. Actually, Molyneux and Chanel released their number 5 fragrance on the same day. They were both called number 5, and it was a joke between them. Because they were friends, and actually Molyneux number 5 was selling much better than Chanel number 5 in the beginning.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. I think I remember reading that maybe in Barbara Herrman's book.
I don't remember when. Or maybe in one of Luca Turin's books. It was.
Yeah. There's a lot of knowledge out there. Books will tell you a lot about
books
about the history of the fragrance industry too, which is endlessly fascinating, and lots of cool stories and controversies behind the fragrance industry too. Like competition and vendettas and everything. My goodness. Oh, there's actually one that I could talk about, and then we'll move it over to Chris because, I mean, the time is just flying. It is That Man from Revlon, which was released in the 50s. So I'm trying to remember, actually, let me put a close up here so you can see that, but this is the 80s reissue of That Man. So if I'm not mistaken, it was if somebody could correct me, I think it was either Elizabeth Arden or was it Estee Lauder, and she would refer to Mr. Revson as, oh, that man. And this was sort of a joke, the name. So he referred to the first fragrance released for men as that man. And I always found that story to be kind of funny. And this is very much a men's fragrance of its time in the late 50s. Citrus, aromatic with sandalwood and spice. Really great stuff. Kind of hard to come by nowadays, but it's not going to, cost you an arm and a leg, but really great. Really great. That man from Revlon. Chris, back to you.
Talking about stories, and we mentioned some music before. Did you know, and this is just a short side story, that you remember the Nirvana, was it a song or an album, Smells Like Teen Spirit, right?
Yeah.
Remember that one? And like, weird title, right? And somewhere I've seen the reason why it was the title Smells Like Teen Spirit, because the late great genius Kurt Cobain used to come into the studio with the other guys, and he smelled of the deodorant of his girlfriend, which the name was Teen Spirit. So Smells Like Teen Spirit comes from the other bandmates saying, well, it smells like Teen Spirit. Oh yes, it's Teen Spirit. And then they kept on. That you can invent some weird names and titles and whatever into whatever you want if you're creative enough. But there's another note that always intrigued me, and I would have that if I would have a fragrance, I would have that note in there, because I always liked it for its kind of weird, but at the same time fresh, invigorating, sort of uplifting quality, and that's aldehydes. Aldehydes in general are sort of not really much used these days at all, and yet they are present in two fragrances that I really love. One is a woman's fragrance, one is a man's fragrance. The woman's fragrance was my mother's signature, the vintage Miss Dior from 1947.
Nice. I almost grabbed that one.
It's just like really it has this aldehyde note that is absolutely non plus ultra to my nose. And then interestingly, I was driven so much apparently by the aldehydes that my second fragrance that I ever wore, a signature fragrance, was Lagerfeld Photo from 1991, the original, the vintage one, and it has a fantastic aldehyde aspect to it. So these two little aldehyde babies here are still very much cherished by me, because I love the note of the aldehyde note that makes a fragrance somehow fresh in a different way. No citrus, no mint, no aquatic. It's fresh in a different way, and I like that a lot. But
good choice. I had a mini of that when I was younger, and I like milked it for as long as I could, because I was too young to afford a bottle of it. But I loved it, and I never got around to replacing it. But I remember really enjoying it back in the day. It was a popular one for a good minute or two in the 90s. Right. But yeah, it's great. So we have this was actually in the description of the video, but I understand if people are, weren't aware, but Lanier had to cancel due to some other obligations, but we're going to try to reschedule him for very soon. So just stay tuned, and we'll get a new date for him to join us. So we're sorry that he couldn't make it. And I'm almost caught up here in the chat. There's a lot of conversation here. Let's see. Cool. What was the brand that made Teen Spirit? I think it was by Menon. I remember the commercials. Wow. And I think that the deodorant sticks looked very similar to the Menon, like Right Guard deodorant sticks, but they were obviously marketed to teenage girls.
Up, between two joints. Well, I'll take just anything. I'll take whatever comes across.
But that's what's funny is, like, I remember they were advertising Teen Spirit, this brand of deodorant stick for teenage girls. They were advertising it like crazy in 1990, 1991. And then next thing you know, I remember the song had come out, the first single, And I immediately thought of the deodorant, but a lot of folks are not aware of it because the deodorant itself was only on the market for a couple years.
That's
So,
the relation, yeah.
Yeah. Justin the Czar, great to see you. Thanks for stopping by. The opening of photo is outstanding, according to Keith. I have to revisit it. It's been a very long time since I smelled it. And I have a couple starred comments from a while back. One question here from Dushan. Do you think that vintage Roche à Femme is dated? It's from 1944. Your thoughts?
No. I mean, it's Roche à Femme is like, to me, Mitsuko is like Shalimar, it's like Chanel number 5, Diorissimo. Those milestones in perfumery, which are totally timeless. When you think of a classy lady, you think of her wearing one of those fragrances, not wearing La Vie est Belle.
If I remember, actually, Roche à Femme has your one of your favorite floral notes there, JJ Liang and or Ylang Ylang, and it has what I forgot to mention that there is one more note, and it's in Roche à Femme as well. It's the peach note. Yeah. And at the beginning of the 80s, the peach note in women's fragrances was very prominent and very strong. And I have an example there by Alain Delon again, Le Thème ta Mère. Okay, Le Thème ta Mère and Le Thème ta Mère number 2. And also I think Sensation. I think even Iquitos has probably some peach note because it just knocks you off. It can be so it's fruity, right? But it's fruity like it really goes straight to your guts if it's overdone. And in the 80s it was overdone. So all these fragrances are a little bit too much compared to our current taste. So for those, the overuse of the peach note, when I feel that, that's when I think it's dated, because it's just I still love the smell, but I think that you couldn't get by with this today. With that peach note in your face, no way.
Probably the last big traditional shipper with a prominent peach note was probably Dior Dune, the feminine version.
Or the femme version.
Yeah, that one's beautiful. Beautiful stuff. There's just sort of like the solar feel to it, very warm. It's like it just feels like almost like not like a cheap tanning lotion, but like a really good quality tanning lotion to me. Like it has that kind of vibe, a lot of this benzyl salicylate, this jasmine-y kind of feel in the heart. Folks, we have just one Buy Me a Coffee. I wanted to thank Anton Constantinou for the coffee. Only one for tonight, please. Let's aim for 20 coffees. We have one. We need 19 more.
You'll get a heart attack.
20 coffees that I can drink over the course of a couple of weeks. So just check out the website there, buymeacoffee.com/JosephColdP. If you prefer super chats, super stickers would be great. Let's aim for 19 more coffees. So you could buy more than one. You could buy 5. You could buy 10. Hey, let's see if we can get to 19. And once we get to that goal, one of you can win a generous sample pack. I have a lot of samples that I don't need. I have multiples, and I have double, triple, quadruple of certain fragrances, and I need to share that wealth. So if you could donate a coffee or 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or however much, it helps support this channel. It helps support Effluvium. So thank you very much. That's my public service message. We're going to do a little bit of an intermission so that we can meditate on what we're talking about, and then we will be right back. And it'll be just one moment while I bring that in. right. And that is our meditation moment. And I'm sorry to see you go, but thank you so much as always for tuning in. And I have a comment here that I was saved. It was a starred comment because I thought it was great. 20-year-olds who smell Kuros today won't say it's dated. They'll say it's WTF. They don't have a point of reference. What do you guys think of that?
20 years who smell Kuros, they won't say it's dated. They say it's what the fuck. Yeah, well, yeah, yeah. In this overly politically correct world, that smell is VTF, WTF, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How can you say something like that? How can you create something like that? That's not correct. Well.
All right. And we have Fragrance Fight Night here. Good to see you, my friend. Okay. All right. Got another one to share. Let's continue this circle. Chris, why don't we have you share another one here, one that is at your side?
What do you guys think of a note that is actually cannot be dated? Because I don't remember any vintage fragrance ever. Well, it depends on what we consider vintage, right? But truly vintage, like from the 80s, 70s, any fragrance boasting that one. But in 1997, the House of Job came out with a fragrance called "What About Adam," and it has a wonderful, yet at the same time slightly weird tomato leaf note in there that is just totally groundbreaking and really smelled at the time when it was coming out so different to anything else. And then they started to include tomato leaf, but and at this point this is vintage. Does it smell dated? No, it doesn't. Even after 26 years, it smells still somehow very artistic to me. But it's a wonderful little fragrance, and it boosts this tomato leaf note. And there's a few, but not that many. I remember Shogun by Alain Delon has a tomato leaf. What else has this?
Valentino Uomo Acqua, I remember.
Okay.
One from the 70s, Eau de Campagne.
Really?
Jean-Claude Ellena from Sicily, Paris. Tomato leaf, galbanum, basil. Beautiful stuff. It just is so invigorating and refreshing in late spring, summertime. Yeah, it was one of Jean-Claude Ellena's first successful releases as a perfumer, along with another one that I have sitting right here, which is Van Cleef & Arpels First.
Yeah.
This is also Jean-Claude Ellena. And this would be arguably dated today, maybe by people who remember sophisticated ladies with their fur coats wearing this. But yeah, it's an early Jean-Claude Ellena. But getting back to the What About Adam, that could very well have been released today.
Yeah.
And that to me is actually like the opposite. Like, I feel like that was ahead of its time.
Absolutely.
I think it was almost like too ahead of its time for what people were reaching for in the 90s. So it never was really commercially successful. But I'll tell you this. I had my roommate who isn't a frag head like we are. They don't, take in all different kinds of scents, of all different types. And he was in love with it. And I said, yeah, you might have to spend a little bit of money on it because it's been discontinued for a while. But he just thought it was the bee's knees. So I think that something like that could be released today by a designer maybe. And that could be like this shift. I think it was way ahead of its time, though. Gorgeous, gorgeous. I think that's my favorite from Job. That one right there. Yeah, very good stuff. Alex, what do you have?
Well, I have, unfortunately, to take advantage of your collection for the next few things. Because, I remember them from my mom's counter, from my mom's cupboard. And those fragrances from the 60s to the 50s to the 80s that had a huge floral art, especially white flowers, tuberose, jasmine, with a strong or not so strong according to the fragrance, animalic note. are now considered vintage. I mean, Pas de Joy. I mean, Jolie Madame. Those kind of fragrances. There was also another big one she had. I don't remember now, but it will come to mind. Those are the feminine fragrances, or even when they had a strong honey note, like La Nuit de Paco Rabanne. Those animalic fragrances marketed to women that, to me, are still very feminine. I mean, I don't think I could wear Joy or Jolie Madame. But probably I'm biased because they were my mom's signature for a certain period of time. And
yeah, for sure, because you will associate with your mother. It's just like
yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe Jolie Madame is more unisex, but Joy to me is still extremely feminine. It's like Chanel No. 5. I mean, I associate that fragrance, or Cacharel Lulu. I associate that fragrance to a woman, definitely to a woman.
Yeah, that one's over the top. For I think a gentleman would have a difficult time being fearless, wearing Lulu out. But I have a little ball.
I can imagine a beautiful woman, a very classy woman wearing Shalimar, but I have no difficulty in wearing Shalimar. But there's something in Joy, in Jolie Madame, that to me screams woman.
I have Jolie Madame, and I never really felt that kind of that it leaned too much more feminine. But I mean, I suppose it could depend on the formulation or version of it, but also that was one of your mother's fragrances, right? Yeah. Exactly. So there you go. You have that association, and you think of your mother as sort of representing.
Jolie Madame is slightly darker, slightly more animalic compared to Joy. Joy, to me, I can wear that. I can wear it I could wear it at home just for smelling it, but I won't feel very comfortable going out with Joy or with Cacharel Lulu or Chanel No. 5. I mean, I don't think. Would you wear Joy?
I wouldn't wear it out. And it's not to say that necessarily, it's not that I would feel like, oh, people think that I'm a little light in the loafers. And it's like, I don't care. I just don't feel like it represents me as somebody who's out and about wearing it, but I could certainly put it on my hand and enjoy it at home.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of fragrances like that where I wear it at home and enjoy it.
Absolutely.
Reading a book or watching a film. Having it as some sort of accompaniment. There's plenty of fragrances like that, and we've mentioned a few of them, like Joy, Van Cleef & Arpels First, Lulu, where I love to smell them, but it wouldn't be a part of my personal get up, like part of my regimen to like, I'm not gonna that finishing touch. I gotta put that Lulu on before I head out the door.
It just sprung to mind the other one that I wasn't remembering. It was Lanvin Arpège.
Yeah, well, that's an eternal classic, though.
It is, and I feel like I can kind of get away with that one though, going out. Yeah, that just moves into the unisex, just enough moves into the unisex territory, I think, Lanvin Arpège. So you have those that kind of tread the line where it's like, well, I'm walking on the wild side here. Let's see if this works. And somehow it ends up working. I mean, I've been complimented on things where I was taking a huge risk, and I'm like, are people going to think I'm wearing a woman's fragrance? And most of the time, like, I mean, people won't say anything, but if they do, they might say like, oh, that smells nice. And they won't say like, I think you're wearing a lady's fragrance. I think that
I could wear this. This is
what's that you have?
The original 1940 Bandy, Robert Piguet.
Is that Bandy?
Bundy, but
hell yeah.
the original Osmotec from 1940, the first one.
Oh my goodness. You have some,
This,
you have
this is totally unisex. Incredible that it was marketed for woman, unisex by today's standard, I think leaning masculine.
For a minute, I thought you have a Ted Bundy fragrance there.
Fernando, good to see you. I'm glad to have you here. And Anton Constantinou, thank you for the super chat. Let's see. I'm going to check to see, or not the super chat, a coffee. I need to get really buzzed here, folks. Well, Anton's the only one. We might have to cut the. I'm gonna pull a Mr. Smelly. Might have to cut this live stream short. So you can find something else to do. Anton Constantinou, I feel like Frisia was to women's fragrances what Cologne was to men's fragrances in the 90s. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Frisia. And they never quite got that Frisia note as convincing enough. It always kind of felt a little bit too shampoo-y for me. But there's one great Frisia fragrance from Diptyque, Ophlisia. And I think that that's a very well done Frisia Soliflor. And actually kind of unisex because it has this sort of coriander kind of feel to it, a little bit that coriander spice in the top. Justin the Tsar, I'm a 240-pound roided out bodybuilder. I wasn't expecting to read that, but thumbs up, man. Like I hit the gym a lot at one time too. You rock Shalimar and Rochafam and Cabochard all the time because those are I think those are definitely unisex. Like those are ones where
by today's standards, definitely.
In today's world where a lot of men's fragrances and women's fragrances, there's a lot of lines blurred. Like there are women's fragrances that came out in the 50s and 60s that smell like they were meant for men, like Bundy, like oh my god, there's nothing.
Miss Dior as well.
The Miss Dior too, Miss Dior. It's so funny, these fragrances that call themselves like Madam and Miss, like they happen to be like pretty butch these days. I have a couple of
Diorel, also Diorel.
Oh yeah, Diorel.
I wear it easily.
Madame Rochat to me is kind of like a more of like a unisex today, and another one that's super unisex. I think I have it sitting here somewhere amongst all. Oh, I think this is it. Yeah, Miss Balmain, like very heavy, rugged leather. It's like a floral leather, but it's not a pretty floral leather. This is like some hardcore stuff. This is some good ass juice, as they say. Pierre Balmain, Miss Balmain. Like nobody would mistake you for wearing a frou-frou fragrance wearing this. Beautiful. Oh god, this is kind of in that same wheelhouse as Azuré, Cabochard, kind of a precursor to Aromatics Elixir, but a lot more aggressive. Amazing stuff, Miss Balmain.
Cinnabar.
Yeah, oh man, Cinnabar would be Oh, look Cinnabar. At this! I like this together. Oh, look, yeah. Get into your respective
like a mugshot.
We'll move on to the other one. I'm more comfortable with that one. Yeah, Cinnabar. Well, Cinnabar and JHL are very kindred. I mean, there's the variations on the same theme. So
that's a common theme with Estée Lauder and of course the side brand Aramis, because having the same in-house perfumer. He did, for example, Aromatics Elixir and Aramis 900. They are quite similar. Cinnabar and JHL.
Exactly, yeah. Cinnabar.
Aramis and Azuré and Alliage and Devon. Love Alliage too. Alliage is much harder to get in its older form these days than it used to be. Somebody mentioned Youth Dew. Youth Dew. No, I don't think this smells feminine today. It may have been the epitome of femininity and matronliness. Talk about what people consider dated. And I'm pretty sure that the people under 25 are not going to have that reference. But I know, being a Gen Xer, at one time I thought this was like, oh, that's what old ladies wear. But I freaking love it now. It's obviously there's going to be a lot of nostalgia there. It kind of hits some memories deep in the hippocampus, but I'll wear the hell out of this. I have no shame in that. I would go out in public wearing Youth Dew.
And speaking of Freja and cologne, another big note in the 80s, early 90s in feminine fragrance was plum. Plum was Lulu, Poison, or Poison.
Well, I can show you a plum fragrance. There's not only because of the plum, because also because of the aldehydes, the peach, the rose, the musk that we've mentioned, all the big notes. There was one by the lake, and I'm at every bloody time I can mention this guy's name as the true and utter genius. I always do, because he was the late guy Gianni Versace with Versus Donna, who has that plum, which has that plum note, but also the aldehydes that I mentioned, and the peach and the rose, and some raspberry as well. This is just and the bottle as well. I mean, this to me is it's don't tell anyone, but it smells like sex bottled. It's really Versus Donna 1992. It was so different, yet still using those heady notes. So Johnny, we miss you.
Thank you very much for that, Chris. And that was not on my radar. I think a lot more has been said for Uomo, but not for Donna. And I'm actually more interested.
Look how they.
Oh, look at that! They look so good together.
Oh, they do. Tell me about it. Like,
yeah. Aw, sweethearts. I'm just reading the channel. It's funny because people expect us gym dudes to wear Axe. Okay. Wait, that timestamp is 6:34. I'm not too far behind, thankfully. And Justin also has white diamonds and all the flankers. Go Justin, man. Like I love to hear that, those who are so passionate and they love fragrance that they're like, fuck anyone who thinks, they're gonna think I'm a softie. I'm like, they're gonna think I'm gay, as if that's a bad thing. I'm gay, like, because that's a bad thing. That's like supposed to be like the worst insult in the world. But no, because these fragrances don't have genitals. They don't have DNA. Oh, well, people talk about fragrances having DNA, but they don't have that kind of DNA. They don't have that. They don't have the chromosomes. So wear what you love. Just like what Lanier, unfortunately, he couldn't make it here tonight. He always closes his videos. I don't know if he still does, but wear what you love, not what people say you should like.
Exactly.
Because that will open new doors for you. That you have a much richer experience if you're not giving a shit what other people think.
That's right. Although I think at the same time that you should wear what you love, but also it should actually somehow fit what you said. You love to smell it indoors, but outdoors it does not represent you. So you love it, yet you still feel it's not entirely you. So people should wear what they love, but they should. You don't wear just any clothes that you love, because it's somehow should fit your personality.
Right.
Color, good color or something. Yeah. So it needs a little bit of fine tuning, I would say, in order to come across as your aura, your personality.
Right. No, it's a very important point to make, and I'm glad that you did. For somebody like me, who's like kind of like class A, perfume nerd. I mean, of course, I'm going to have plenty of fragrances for reference that I'm going to want to wear at home. But you do make a very good point. Like, if I were to go out to the gym again, like I used to on a regular basis, I don't know. I mean, I'd be probably specific on what I'd wear to the gym anyhow, because I'd just be so self-conscious about accosting other people with the way that I smell. But I probably would be a lot more conscientious of it that would fit me. Just like I would do the same if I were to go out to dinner with a friend, or if I was still dating. I've been in a relationship for 12 years, but if I were still dating, going out with friends, going out to dinner, going out to a certain occasion, I do think that those things are important, and being aware of something that would fit the occasion. I think that's kind of a fun part of it too. That's why I don't necessarily dismiss that. Like, on the one hand, you could say wear what you want whenever you want, but there's fun behind, like, it's just like choosing an outfit. Like, if I were to choose a particular outfit, if I were choosing a suit and tie or a tux,
you don't go with your tracksuits to the opera if you're talking about classical music, right? So
yes. So if I were going to the opera, if I were that cultured lately, which I probably could stand to do a lot more of that actually. Then I would think about something that would suit the occasion, that would set the tone. I think that could be pretty fun too. Like, it's kind of like, when I notice when I go into a store and a person working at a store is wearing something very strong, or a waiter or waitress is wearing something very strong.
I don't like that, actually. I think it's an insult.
I think it's really inappropriate. I wouldn't say to them they shouldn't wear a fragrance at all, but this is where, and people are always talking about like, oh, it's not strong enough. People are not going to notice me, and all that beast mode bullshit. There's something to be said for fragrances that wear more intimately, so you can enjoy it for yourself and your immediate company. And if you are working in waiting tables, the people from several feet away are not smelling you. So that's where those fragrances can be very useful if you're looking at it from a functional sense, but also you can enjoy having a fragrance. So there's, a lot of common sense behind it, no pun intended. And Paroli says, I got Silence. Silence is from Giacomo. Wonderful. Don't find it unisex. Oh, for shame. Well, I'm sorry for that. Perhaps you could do what we do with Lulu and enjoy it for yourself at home in the privacy of your own home if it doesn't suit you for outdoors wear. There you go. All right, guys. What else do you got for us? Chris, do you have another one besides you that you want to chat about?
We mentioned the mahogany. Do I spell it pronounce it correctly? The mahogany.
Perfectly, yeah.
And so it's probably carnation, whatever is in there. But again, it could be dated, but it's not. Yet it boasts a lot of those notes where we think maybe dated, maybe not. But it's always there. Egoist. Somehow. It never goes out of fashion yet. It could be a very but actually I think it first was released under the name of Bois Noir in '87, and then turned out to be Egoist later on. But it just popped into my head that we were talking about this mysterious note of mahogany, and it's here, if I'm not mistaken. It's actually in Egoist, and I love this fragrance, as you can see. I drink it sometimes in the morning.
There must have a little bite to it when it goes down.
It's a sexy juice, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Spray some into the coffee.
I'm a little behind here, but just had like a clarification on frou.
But also there is this aspect of notes being used in a very old and probably old dated fragrance like Azzaro Pouron, and then again in a much more recent fragrance called Forever by Moschino, Natalie Lawson creation, by the way. The star anise here. You have a star anise in this one, which is a total different star anise than in that one, and this smells dated. Okay, not only because of the star anise, but the general blend. Yet it's still around, and this one, it smells so modern and just so pleasing forever, right? So
that's a very cool bottle too. I love it. Is that a cap? Let me go close up here and
it's a cap. You can
just isn't that wild? You gotta I like your grill.
yeah, exactly. I'm grilling me. So maybe again, it depends probably on the blend, on how they touch these different notes that we mentioned along the way, because I'm sure there's a modern peach note somewhere that I don't know of, but at least for star anise, I know that there's a modern one and a dated old one, although I really love it.
Yeah, and the same goes for example for patchouli has always been with us, but now you have all the chocolatey patchouli or the dark, pungent, medicinal patchouli. But back then, you had something like this, or Givenchy Gentleman, or Giorgio for Men, or like
Heritage,
Guerlain Heritage. They're totally different patchouli. Very, very woody, slightly green, is a totally different way of blending that note.
Ah,
But patchouli cannot be considered. Well, maybe a particular kind of patchouli will be forever associated with the hippies movement in the late 60s, early 70s.
Charles Manson murders. I think that's a
Yeah.
smell of.
Yeah, but you know, you have patchouli also in Narciso Rodriguez for him, together
That's
with the
beautiful.
violet leaf, and it smells totally different from Cartier Santos. And it smells completely different from Reminiscence.
just want to bring into relief Justin the Czar's comment here. JJ, you were so right about Devon Vintage. I have the newer, but just smelled the vintage a couple hours ago. It's so much deeper and more animalic in the dry down. Arguably, yes. But I still enjoy both. So I think that both of them are, well done in their formulations. One could appeal more to certain sensibilities than the other. Once again, I have a comparison series video on Devon Vintage versus Devon Modern, which I think might be on the verge of getting discontinued itself. I think all of those from the Gentleman's Collection.
I think Aramis is gone at this point.
Yeah. You go to the Aramis website, they don't have anything. It's not functioning. I visited it recently. Everything is gone.
They don't want to make money, obviously. I don't know what happened.
Yeah. It's sad. It's sad. Number crunchers make these decisions. Like, I guess that's losing money for them because they're greedy. It's unfortunate that they couldn't at least make them like limited edition or something. You could order them from the website, but yeah.
Well, at least,
what can you do?
At least the Aramis reformulation has always been perfectly acceptable and great fragrances still. So at least you can still find modern bottles that smell absolutely fantastic, in my opinion.
I just wanted to do a shout out for Eau de Parfum. He or she bought 5 coffees. I really do appreciate that, my friend. We're going to be running until about 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You guys can stay for as long as you like, or if it's bedtime, that's fine. But I think I'll be running until about 7:30 p.m. If you would like us to stay on it at 7:30 p.m., I'm trying to get better at this. Like I'm not good at this whole thing, but I'm getting better at it. If you would like us to say,
actually, I am very familiar with the Acro fragrances. I also have the same discovery set. So if you want to recap to smell again, an update on your first impressions.
Well, I think that the coffee one is actually growing on me because now it smells more like tobacco than coffee. Actually, no, it's not that one. It is the smoke one that smells more like tobacco.
Yeah,
I think there's a material in it. It's called tabanon. It's a very strong, high impact material. And it is used in making tobacco accords, and it's slightly overdosed here, and I kind of enjoy it. But it's still extremely smoky.
It was quite ashy in the
there's an ashiness to it too. Like I was saying earlier, there's still this sort of like burnt, ashy, like wood that's been burnt through and through.
Yeah,
it looks like Chris is. You just listen. It doesn't look like you'd be too into this one. Do you like the idea?
I like the one that you mentioned by Naomi Gauthier, Bois d'Asquez. I like that one.
Oh, Bois d'Asquez, yeah.
Yeah, but it's smoky scents are very one-dimensional. You can get bored of them very quickly, I think.
I'm inclined to agree because they tend to be pretty linear.
Yeah.
It's like
you don't sit by the campfire the whole. One night is okay having a few beers, but the next day the smoke is annoying, right? So
there was a song from the 70s, "Smoke of a Distant Fire." I like the idea of that, not the smoke imbuing your clothes as you're sitting right in front of it, where you have to wash it out of your clothes. That's where it's too intense. Right. And I'm a little concerned that this smoke from Acro kind of falls into that category. The coffee, no.
Too sweet.
Just have it. It's too sweet. It's too Not that I expect things to always smell natural, but it smell like the problem I have with very coffee forward fragrances is they tend to smell very plasticky and synthetic after a while.
Yeah, because well, every country has its own kind of making coffee, which is very different from one another. But I think that most coffee fragrances mimic the most famous coffee house, Starbucks. So
Yeah.
it's very little coffee and lots of sweeteners, aroma chemicals, and that's how Starbucks
Yeah,
coffee smell.
milky, like
If you
creamy with vanilla and sugar, and yeah.
yeah, if you ever drank an espresso coffee in Italy, it's something totally different.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah. That's
extremely bitter, extremely strong. And that's the coffee I drink every day. So for me, finding a perfect coffee fragrance is very, very difficult.
Americans have a little bit more of a difficult time with bitter flavor. I love bitter flavors, but Americans love their sweet. They love a lot of sugar, and they don't want anything to contrast it. It's just got to be a lot of frosting, a lot of icing. I mean, they have this popular flavor now in the supermarkets. I see it. It's birthday cake flavor, and I find it to be like it has sprinkles. Oh. No, that doesn't. Not my taste.
A very popular dessert like tiramisu. It's the original recipe is not very sweet. I mean, it's made with coffee. It's made with mascarpone cheese, and the only sweetness comes from the cookies you put in the base that are that are soaked by the coffee. If you put some sugar in the coffee, that's the only sweetness you get from tiramisu. But it's a dessert, but it's not sweet, really.
Yeah, I've had good tiramisu, and it isn't excessively sweet, and it has like a lot. It's more spicy. It's more like, yeah. That's some good stuff. So I just want to catch up on the chat a little bit. No, I don't want to be too behind right now. I'm currently looking at the timestamp from about 17 minutes ago. So I think that people would probably want to have their comments highlighted. So we'll catch up a little bit. Anton Constantinou, I'll tell you what's dated. Ornate fragrance bottles. Most fragrance bottles these days have a boring, nondescript, scandified look. But that's modern aesthetics for you. That's also being cheap, because they don't want to use unique molds. We were talking about that actually last week on the live stream. Yeah, Ellana's doing it as well. The B bottle mold is probably too expensive for them to produce, so they moved on to the upside down heart version, easier to produce, putting all of them in that bottle. But yeah, especially like modern releases. Excuse me, designer releases, they don't really put that much effort into them either. Yes, fragrance has no gender. It's true. I will say that till my dying day. Whale antelope is another unisex. I actually have another whale here, or vale. Can somebody tell me, is it, they were based in Paris, but is it whale or vale?
Vile.
Vile.
But I'm from Germany. I'm from Germany, so don't ask me.
I would think it would be, yeah. I thought it was at least it was pronounced with a V sound. Vile. Zibelline. I have Zibelline here, and this is a classic beauty from the late 30s. This was actually marketed for the ladies to apply on their fur coats, so their sable or their mink. And it was supposed to enhance that. There's a heliotrope and carnation and florals, but also this animal, kind of animalic background. And I detect things like kind of like costus and musks and a bit of civet. But it's much more refined than a taboo. It's been discontinued for quite a while. Anuj, as a matter of fact, helped me to secure this little 30 milliliter bottle, which is more than enough for me. Great one for reference. But I do enjoy Antelope as well. Great aldehydic from its time. Continuing with the chat here. Middle Eastern dudes in my gym wear some loud oud frags. You can smell them across the gym. So this is just we're going back to the conversation we were having earlier about like appropriate fragrances, and I think maybe loud oud fragrances is the worst thing you could possibly wear in a place where people are perspiring, where they're sweating. Like
only thing to wear in the gym is shower before, wear the deodorant stick, workout, shower after the workout. No fragrance in the gym. I don't think it's a good idea.
I wear it after I work out. Like I don't, to me, it's almost too distracting if I'm doing it while working out. Justin, but that's fine if you do. I don't want to, because I know Justin mentioned that he does like to, but the choices you made were at least not like the scent assault type. The fragrances used to have to compete with cigarettes in the bars. Yes, a lot of them, I think that they were composed, they were formulated to compete with the cigarettes. We were actually talking about that last week as well on the stream. Paroli, I don't think fragrances have a gender, but I do think that they're composed with a specific type of person in mind. You can usually tell right away if the perfumer thought of a man or a woman. Yeah. Fair enough. You can follow that narrative, or you can say F you to the narrative and just go ahead and enjoy it anyways. No rules. Try Gravity. Chris, are you familiar with Gravity? Early 90s classic.
No, I've heard of it, and but I've never owned it, never tried it.
Yeah. I remember getting a little bottle of it in my stocking when I was 14 years old. That's the last time I remember smelling it. I also got Preferred Stock, which I actually do have a bottle of Preferred Stock, but those were the
one as well in New York City. Nice, no, but it's a tough one. That's dated. I mean, that is a dated fragrance. No question about that. But still nice.
Let's see. I'm getting caught up here. Getting caught up, folks. It was a very active chat, surprisingly enough. Hi, Mishi. Great to see you. Scent of the day, Amazon from Hermes. Wonderful. Montal Incest Cafe. Heinrich, you must be referring to when I was discussing the Acro Awake, that very plasticky synthetic kind of dry down. Fernando, we have somebody pulling through, our dear Fernando, with $65 Mexican dollars super chat. Thank you so much for the fuel for the live stream. Much appreciated. We are approaching 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Justin Desar, Love Bitter, Love Lauder for Men, and Polo and Oscar for Men, and Aramis 900. Affogato, best dessert ever conceived. Delicious stuff. And Just Add Light has a vintage aftershave of Gravity. And we're all caught up now. The most recent chat in the chat section. Anton Constantinu, one modern note I would personally like to see outlawed is saffron. I bloody hate the smell of it in perfume. It is at the core of so many modern saccharine sweet Middle Eastern fragrances I loathe. What do you guys think of saffron in fragrance?
When it's overdosed and mixed with oud, I think the world is fed up with that.
Yeah,
we have so many rose oud, saffron oud combination that we can't take it anymore. Come on. Stop it.
It's a tired trope at this point. And yeah, they'd always heap on the saffron on top of the oud.
Yeah, because they want to tone down the oud. But if you use real freaking oud, people want to smell that. I mean, use that freaking oud.
Right.
You don't want the animalic barnyard smell of the oud. Use another compound.
Yeah,
use something that you cedar, use sandalwood.
Yeah. Go move into the antique woody kind of direction, like aged wood or like kind of like decaying wood. I love that kind of oud, but not. No, that's another one I'm temperamental about oud. I actually the oud that I most enjoyed was actually genuine burning agar wood chips. That's beautiful stuff. Very hard to capture in fragrance. Oud atars. and very few oud fragrances on the market. Many of them overuse these pre-made bases that have been that are commercially available to perfumers through things like IFF and Givaudan and et cetera, and you smell them over and over again in different fragrances. Like, there it is. It just like it sticks out like a sore thumb. But getting back to saffron, though, I do actually love saffron in cuisine. And it's supposed to be like it's supposed to be like an aromatic, beautifully aromatic kind of thing. The only saffron fragrance that I enjoy thus far that has a prominent saffron note to it is Saffron Tout Blanc, the troubling saffron from L'Artisan Parfumeur, which is actually a Bertrand Duchefort fragrance. And that is saffron and rose, but no oud. And it's beautiful because there's no oud trying to be oud there. So check that out if you would like to actually try to saffron fragrance without all of that other business.
And by the way, saffron is extremely expensive. So probably many companies don't use real saffron.
Saffronol. They use like saffroline or saffronol. Yeah, saffron absolute is very expensive, but a little goes a long way. But I guarantee you, with the ones that are mass produced, it's a synthetic compounds or synthetic bases.
Maybe it doesn't smell as good as real saffron,
especially when it's overused, which I think it is. Yeah, if you use it too much of it. Yeah. Paroli says, I like the saffron and Ganymede. Chris, anything else to share with us? Yeah, I don't want to keep
totally breaking away from or not exactly, because you mentioned coffee smelling fragrances, and there is a fragrance that is unique in my collection and fairly rare as well. And it's this fragrance released by the house of Karl Lagerfeld back in 2004 in collaboration with H&M. And it's called Liquid Karl. And the only reason that he released this fragrance was that it smells exactly like his favorite smell in life, and that is of freshly baked bread. He loved the smell of freshly baked bread, and this fragrance is exactly the smell of freshly baked bread and nothing else. It just smells like you have a fresh loaf of bread, cut it open, smell the crust, smell the inside, and just inhale. That's what the fragrance is all about. Very, very strange. I don't really wear it, but it very authentic at the same time, and very rare, and a great member of my collection. Liquid Karl.
So is that still easily obtainable, Chris? No. Oh.
Nothing out there. I'm so sorry. No, I don't think so. No.
But
it smells like bread. It's unbelievable. Like,
that's why I kind of want to try it.
And I've seen an interview. He said, "I want that smell bottled," and that's why this came out. Yeah, very selfish release from Karl at the time.
I kind of love it though. He's like, this is what I love, so I'm gonna have to just share what I love with all of you.
And, exactly. Yeah. Like it or not.
So I wanted to circle back to the piney fragrances a little bit, because I have a few that are sitting over here. Some older versions of them that have held up quite nicely, and it's a trio of them. So we're back in the pine forest, and I think that this is also one that has a pretty good amount of time in it. This is Puig. This is a little baby bottle. It's about 25 milliliters of Aqua Brava. Yeah, by Puig. That's my little baby bottle of that, 25 milliliters. And Aqua de Selva from Victor. These lovely little vintage bottles, and they've been kept so well, and they still smell quite lovely. I'll open this one. Piney pine. It just is so invigorating. These were meant to wake you up. They were meant to put a pep in your step. And then I have, this is not a baby one. It's kind of like a normal size one.
Yeah.
A little Pinot Silvestre, That splash
That's the benchmark
version.
of pine.
What
Yeah,
it is. It is.
1955, I think 1955, right?
Yeah, this is a vintage, and you can tell from the label here. It's kind of like maybe I'll turn the light on here and see if I can show it a little bit better. Yeah, is that any better? A little bit.
yeah.
You can see it. This is from an '80s version of it. Oh God! Open up this little pine cone. One of my favorite bottles as well.
Wow.
It just smells like home because we had pine trees that grew all around our house when I was growing up. They're Eastern white pines, and
That's
these are the
nice.
type. Yeah, these are the types of pines that you'd have like the sap, the resin just dripping down the side of the tree, and it just takes me to childhood smelling fragrances like this. So those are my little pine babies, Aqua de Selva, Aqua Brava, and Pinot Silvestre. I don't really know how well the newer Pinot Silvestre or well, the Aqua de Selva, the newer kind I had was a bit thinner, but I never really tried the
Doesn't last a lot. Doesn't last
yeah.
a lot,
Yeah.
but it's still quite good. But you know, pine.
You can go ahead, Alex. Well, you can finish your comment. Well,
pine is quite tricky because it has so many different aspects: pine needles, pine cones, pine wood, pine resins. For example, both Filia Nagils and Pinot Silvestre has a note of pine, but they are totally different. One is very resinous, while the other is very fresh, very green.
Yeah. Like I feel like the pine from Pinot Silvestre is much more crushing the needles, that kind. And then with Fianaghi, it's not just the needles, but also the bark and the sap and just the kind of whole headspace of the tree and kind of those little sweeter aspects that would be hard to capture from just the oils themselves. Fianaghi, that's gorgeous.
Great.
It's a real shame that they put in those gratte-ciels and now they're so expensive now.
Yeah,
God.
but that's poetry, art. Call it like applied to fragrances because you really feel transported to a mountain cabin during a snowstorm with your fire going, surrounded by pines. It's beautiful.
My lo-fi lighting here kind of makes it look like I'm in front of a fire right now. Need a little flicker, that's all. I want to get back to you, Chris, really quickly regarding Boss Sport, but I just want to...
Yeah, exactly. It does not have pine, but it smells like it has. And it actually has your favorite notes there. It has carnation and geranium, along with some tarragon and moss. And it really smells very piney. And it's absolutely dated to no end. And it has a bit of soapy aspect. And it's like 1987 locker room in Wimbledon. That's how it smells.
Love it.
But it's really, really adorable, and it smells like it's a piney fragrance, but it's actually not.
Yes, but also it has both geranium and tarragon that can go quite minty. And that's
Rachel. Hi.
Hey, Rachel. And their mintiness can be a little balsamic and give the same vibe of a pine.
It's beautiful.
Hey, Mr. Clean. I love the smell of fresh baked bread, and I bake sourdough every week, but I'd never want to smell like that on my skin. I kind of like, I really like Jus de Peau and other Serge Lutens, which is supposed to evoke, that Maillard reaction that comes from bread, that kind of toastiness. I find that to be quite lovely, but there's other things going on in that fragrance. It's not just bready. There's a peachiness, there's an osmanthus, there's a sandalwood, a lovely sandalwood in that as well. I don't know which bottle it was that I was showing Rachel, but just let us know, or if it was one of the other guys in terms of great bottle, because that was a couple minutes ago. Yet again, an offensive pine, and I love it. I like that's how it's referred to as an offensive pine. It's very muscly and very gristled, because it's earthy. It's very earthy and very outdoorsy. Like it's a very outdoorsy scent. Like I describe that and Devon as sort of fragrances suited to the outdoorsman. Like they feel very much of the wilderness. Chopping wood, yes.
The tough guy.
Yes. Wearing kind of a Paul Bunyan, wearing a plaid shirt and boots and
yes.
Yeah.
As we were speaking about occasions, those are beautiful fragrances, but probably you wouldn't wear them in a suit and tie situation, very formal situation. Like also Orisa Legrand Chypre-Mousse, beautiful fragrance, but they are more outdoorsy, not suited for a formal occasion.
I could see wearing them maybe for a dinner out, but not for the theater and not for a wedding or I don't know. It's they're a little too rough around the edges for a formal
why don't we just throw all these vintage fragrances out and all wear our Aventus overdosed, right?
Oh, Aventus, man, I miss the Aventus train. Like, I was into the Creed fragrances before that, and I already was starting to kind of lose interest by the time Aventus came around.
I missed it too intentionally.
Me too. So.
I always like the Grey Cabaret better than Aventus.
Modern Pinot is
horde too. Yeah, exactly.
And Brian can confirm that it's the modern one is horde, unfortunately. All these donuts and no coffees. Come on, people! You're throwing donuts and cookies at each other, and there are no coffees for me. Let's throw over a few coffees if you don't mind. I'll bring up the link again.
Guys, by the way, I think I'm gonna head on
because it's very late where you are, if I'm not mistaken.
But I think we covered a huge range of stuff so far, and it has been a tremendous pleasure to share these thoughts with you guys. And whenever you want me on board, I'm in. And Alex, if you're ever down in South Italy during the summer, let me know, because we're planning some stuff in Salerno. And have a nice evening, guys. And again, it was a tremendous pleasure. And so many fragrances. My God, why are we having so many fragrances? But that's another topic.
that would require another whole 2.5 hours to talk about for sure.
Yeah.
Chris, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me again. I hope that when we can get Lanier back, we can get Lanier on, that you could join us for that as well. Once we reschedule that.
For me, he's the absolute epitome of style and fragrance related je ne sais quoi, right?
His contributions were missed this evening, and I do look forward to having him join us, hopefully in the near future. But Chris, have a wonderful evening. I'll chat with you soon. Be well.
Thanks very much. Grazie. Ciao. Ci vediamo.
Ciao.
Take care now. All right. And all right. So it's just two of us for the remaining time here. We're going to. Oh, sorry about that. That's my wake up call. And Anton, aside from progressions in the discovery of new notes, accords, what would you say are the main sources of inspiration that determine what notes, accords are in fashion and when?
Hard to say, I think. I don't know. Maybe something related to fashion. Like we were saying before, fashion and fragrances, though they were not born together, they have made a lot of their way together. So probably every change in fashion can bring a change in fragrance, or maybe it's just the economic side of things. How expensive or not are the main ingredients? And they try, perfumers are forced to use what's in their budget.
I think a lot of it has to do with that, the ability to source certain ingredients. If we're talking about the natural materials, there have been changes in the access to these materials, restrictions to them. Certain species have been ravaged, so they become threatened or endangered. Certain conditions from year to year and even decade to decade can affect the yield of certain fragrant materials. And it can affect actually the quality of them as well. Too many dry seasons results in maybe inferior or superior product, depending upon, the climate that it requires. And I'm trying to think. As far as other notes and accords, is probably, globalization. With globalization and with more Eastern influence rather than the colonialist kind of Eastern influence. That's where we started to see things like, incenses come into vogue. You were just starting to see a little bit of that in the 70s and 80s, but to really see it come full-fledged by the late 90s, Comme des Garçons, the rest is history. Same thing with oud. So yeah, it has to do with the overlapping of cultural influence, which I think also with the advent of the internet, I think that, having the World Wide Web and having immediate access to the world at your fingertips enables us to explore different ideas and fragrance that we hadn't explored before the 21st century. But yeah, those are just some aspects of it. Anton kind of actually continues in his comment. What aspects of popular culture are a driving force in determining what notes accords are in fashion and when? Popular culture. You want to tackle that one, Alex?
Well, maybe I don't know if popular culture, but something I can see a trend about society, for example, for example, the 80s were we were in economic boom, so the world was, especially Europe and the United States, the Western world was very rich, and we had very rich, opulent fragrances. The 90s where the wave was, we were on the downhill of the economic boom, and fragrances started to thin out. 2000 and 2010s, we were very skeletal because there has been the world economic crisis.
Right.
Recently, we have probably I don't know if it has been totally cancelled or not, but gender in fragrances in the 80s and the 90s was a thing. You have fragrances for men, fragrances for women. There was no unisex fragrances. Now we have, and that reflects the society, which is much more tolerant and much more, we accept much more all the sexual preferences that are in between men and women. I already told this. I grew up in Italy in the 70s in a society which was extremely influenced by the Catholic religion, and homosexuality or everything that was different from heterosexuality was seen as the mark of the beast. We have changed the society, and now everything is more accepted and welcome, actually. And I think both the fashion and the fragrances kind of reflects this change in society.
Yeah. You can see those shifts, through those decades. You're absolutely right. Like, even with the 60s, you were starting to see this, the love generation and flower power and hippies, and you were starting to see that patchouli was starting to become a thing in fragrance more so than it ever had before. And then that gave rise to the 70s, where there was liberation in women. So women were wearing fragrances that were more sporty and green and outdoorsy, green chypras. Then men were starting to be more liberated in the way that they express themselves personally. Maybe we didn't see a shift as far as the openness of sexuality, but of sensuality. Maybe we weren't seeing so much gender nonconformity, but we were seeing men who were paying more attention to their appearance and how that might attract the opposite gender or the same gender or whatever, and that was reflected in some of those fragrances.
It was very, very rare. I remember in the 70s and the 80s, we took a lot less care of ourselves as far as grooming, because it was seen as a feminine thing.
Yeah. So maybe the stealth way of doing that was just through the colognes and the fragrances. Maybe it wasn't so much in plucking eyebrows and manscaping, but to have a spicy, alluring, bold fragrance in ways that we hadn't seen before in men before the 70s. And then, of course, like you mentioned, like the 80s with the rise of excess and the materialism and having things that were luxurious, and that was reflected in fragrance. Think about it, like Dynasty. They had a Carrington fragrance.
Yeah, that's the culture of the looks.
Yeah. And then in the 90s, you had the CK1, which was, I think, the first very forward. I mean, people argue that that YSL Eau Libre in the 70s and maybe Hohang by Balenciaga were marketed.
Hohang was pretty unisex, yes.
Yeah, I think that they weren't really specific on who it was for in either of their ad campaigns, so they were considered to be like among the first that were like unisex, like marketed as unisex. But it was really that CK1 in the 90s where it really, because of a huge advertising campaign. So you were just beginning to see like the very beginnings of more accepting attitudes towards men expressing themselves in a way that isn't typically masculine. And then we have the 21st century and everything is just a free for all, which is fine. But I think that, I think it's great that most fragrances are marketed as unisex at this point. They may guide you and say like, well, this might lean feminine traditionally, but anybody can wear it.
But I think that also improves your will to try new things. If a fragrance is unisex, you have to try if it suits you or not.
Right.
So you are more inclined to try different things and find your own way. When I was in my teens, you bought Taca Noir because that's the fragrance for a man. Mm-hmm. That was the smell of that generation because it was everywhere. Yeah. Because it embodied perfectly the man of the 80s.
Yeah. I by Brian brings up Luca Turin said that Antaeus 1981 was the first quote unquote masculine frag to be a mega hit among gay men. Yeah, at that time, I think to an extent it was also Kouros and Dior Joule. And there's one here, and I don't have much history on it, but I did
Lapidus.
this original Lapidus, not even like this is the 70s. The Ted
Yeah,
Lapidus.
I had that. I used that.
I wrote a review on this, and I set it. I set the what's the word I'm looking for? Long day. The setting is in a gay club. Like I actually write about this, and the setting is a gay club because for some reason wearing this made me think of like the gay culture of the late 70s and early 80s, this hyper masculinity, very like, you know, it was very on the down low in the public, but in the clubs, it was like, you know, a very hyper masculine kind of look. And this is a very hyper masculine leather. I love the kind of leather that would that came out around this time.
But here, Turin seems to imply that a gay man should wear or should feel like a female. That's not always the case. I mean, there are gay men, which I know, that like other men, but they don't feel feminine at all. They feel masculine.
No, because I think there's always this confusion between gender expression and sexuality, you know, like it's really, I mean, straight up ignorant to think that there's always that masculinity and male expression is mutually exclusive from being a homosexual or bisexual male. There are plenty of books written that discuss that, and the fact that you know these associations have a lot to do with cultural perceptions. That being said, nothing wrong with men expressing themselves the way that the opposite gender would. But there's very nearsighted assumptions on gender expression as it pertains to sexuality. It runs a gamut. I mean, there's straight guys where it runs a gamut. I can't tell you how many times I met straight men where they're somewhat light, they're kind of effeminate, and they're totally, you know, heterosexual, have a wife that they very much love, and they have children, and it just goes to show you, you know.
Yes, I mean,
it becomes like arbitrary after a while to really even care either way, you know.
Yes, I mean, if your sexual preferences go in a determined direction, it doesn't imply that you should act, dress, and have the taste of the heterosexual part. That, I mean, if you like men, you don't necessarily have to feel like a woman.
No, because it has nothing to
like a woman.
Yeah, because it has nothing to do with it has nothing to do with the gender that somebody identifies as, and that gets all confusing these days. You know, like where people are kind of confusing it all together and putting it all into one group. Like it's there's a difference. Yeah.
Honestly, I have my daughter explaining me all the differences, all the different way in which people can identify themselves now, because to me it's very confusing, honestly.
Well, yeah, and I don't want to open up that can of worms because we know how controversial that can get. But yeah, I mean, gender. There's a lot of different views on gender expression that I don't really feel like I'm an authority to talk about, because I'm just a regular male, born male that identifies as male, so I don't even feel like it's my territory to talk about that. But I can understand that. I mean, but I respect it, even if I don't understand it. I respect it, and I think that it's better to do that than to argue against it, because then people just get the wrong idea. Not to digress too much from fragrance.
Oh, wow.
But fragrance, though, thankfully, there's no baggage. It doesn't have a gender, so wear whatever you want. But try to have common sense about it. You know, and also common sense about how much you're wearing too. Never the overspraying crap. I say that
Yeah,
time and again. Don't
fragrance,
overspray and go onto a train or a bus. The people are now banning fragrances from trains because you motherfuckers.
Fragrances are like music. They have always been free. And there's just a marketing reason for labeling them in a certain way. That's
Anuj,
just marketing.
Anuj, we love you. Thank you very much for the super chat. I was mentioning you more than once earlier for many of the fragrances that you had procured for me to add to my collection. So I'm forever grateful to you. Thank you very much. And
Great guy.
Fernando's scent of the day, Galant Homme EDP.
Good one.
Yes, this is a very good one. And I wish that I had a better setup with this here. I'm just going to set up a couple things in my branding. Guys, we are going to be on for just a couple more minutes here. If you haven't super chatted or bought a coffee, please do so. You do come up in a list of contributors, which I will be compiling at the end of the Effluvium season. Do you want to appear on that list? Better yet, do you not want to appear on that list? Do you want to be a person who isn't mentioned? Think about that.
Speaking of coffee, since you were testing that coffee fragrance, I'm curious about haze.
Oh, the haze, yeah, because I think we got sidetracked when we were talking about that. Yeah, haze is definitely my favorite of the three.
To me, it was a straight wild mint.
I could see it getting a little bit mintier in the dry down. It opened up total wormwood, though. Like to me,
Artemisia. Anisic.
Oh, Rachel, we were doing 3 impressions, and I started off with the Acro. What do they call it? A starter set or the
Discovery set.
Discovery set, yeah, and this little canister here. So I did 3 of them. I did Awake, I did Smoke, and I did Haze. And so far, I am absolutely smitten with Haze because I love a big dollop of wormwood, of absinthe wormwood. And I might have to wear that a few times. And I might end up adding that to my collection, and you know what that means. You know, that must mean it's a really big deal because I have no business adding things to my collection at this point.
Do you want some background about the brand, or
could you enlighten us on that?
Sure. Accro is a slang French word that means junkie, and as you can see, all the fragrances are themed about different addictions. The haze was themed about cannabis.
Really?
To me, it smells nothing like weed.
No, not at all.
No. Coffee, of course. Caffeine, smoke. Then they have malt. They have dark, which is chocolate. And the last one, night, I think it's about sex. I think you love that one because I don't give you any spoiler, by the way. The brand is actually owned by Oliver Crasp's daughter and her husband, so you can imagine who is the master perfumer behind them.
I can. Ooh, I'm looking at the names: Dark, Malt, and Night.
Yeah.
Ooh, so those will be for next week. I'll be.
Yeah, I think you love Night. Night. I probably would be your favorite of the last 3.
I think you're getting a good idea of what my taste is, so I look forward to trying that one.
By the way, I'm setting up another bunch of samples. I was waiting to send you because I wanted to come back from exams with something else, and I will send you something in the near future.
That would be great. Thank you very much for that. There's still a lot of frontier that I haven't explored. Just when
Yeah,
I think I've reached all corners of the fragrance universe,
that's
it's
why I sent you. That's
incredible.
why last time I sent you those matière première. I wasn't sure that you would like them. In fact, you didn't.
I know I was
But
pretty opinionated about them.
yeah, yeah, but that's what the market is offering today. The kind of designerish niche designer fragrances at niche prices that the market is offering. Matière Première, Parfum Marley, Sam Xerjoff. That's what a part of the niche world is offering.
Yeah.
Literally, designer like
I know.
fragrances.
There's so many houses like that, and they try to look flashy and opulent with their bottles, and there's a lot of marketing. There's a lot of distractions, and then when you try the fragrance, it's kind of like that. This is what all the commotion is
Yes, in
about.
fact, there have been many brands at Texas that I completely skipped because I knew there was nothing interesting. But there was one brand actually that surprised me because if I had listened to all the hype they received in the last couple of years, I would have thought they are the usual shell brand, but
Yeah,
they are quite good. Electimus.
Electimus. Okay.
Some are quite good. The leather one is very good.
Raj, Cacharel Porom. I'm gonna do my next comparison series video. I'm gonna. That's one of the few series from the beginning of my channel that I'm gonna continue. I was sampling a few other ones, but I'm gonna continue that one. I'm gonna be doing an older version comparison of Cacharel to a newer version. But I do love Cacharel Porom. It's a great scent of the day, and Tripler can agree on that. The coffee counter's still open, folks. I think we're going to be kind of wrapping up here a little bit soon, but there still is time to buy me a few coffees. Hey, if somebody buys me 3 or more coffees, we'll have this run for 20 more minutes. How about that? 20 more minutes. If somebody buys 3 coffees, we're only going to give it about 5 minutes for that, though, because we're not going to wait around desperately hoping for somebody to buy 3 coffees. But if you do buy 3 coffees, 20 more minutes. Nutmeg does rock. Love it.
I think in Cacharel it's quite a bit overdosed, but I like nutmeg. But Cacharel Purom, I think it's a bit too pungent to my taste.
I kind of like its pungency. That's kind of something, yeah. But you got to be a lover of nutmeg. I mean, you can really like nutmeg, but if you're a lover of nutmeg, then Cacharel comes easily to you.
Yeah, it's sure. If you can make a comparison, which is not quite right because of the difference in quality, I can compare it to Serge Noir for the clove.
Yeah. Which I love clove, but that ends up being almost too intense for me. One that I think does a similar job, but does it better, more to my liking, is and I featured it on one of my recent videos, which happened to be dated fragrances, 5 great dated fragrances. Milk of Flowers by G.O.F. Trumper. Yeah. Lovely stuff. So, folks, I just wanted to bring up some of the guests who are going to be coming up. Hopefully, we can have Lanier join us in the near future. We can get him booked. Even if it's not for a Tuesday night, we could do maybe a special edition, because much of the Tuesdays are now booked until the end of the Effluvium season, which is May 30th. We're going to have a summer recess until September 19th. That is a recess from weekly effluviums. We'll do monthly ones. One of those monthly ones I'm discussing with Darius, better known as Persiles. I think he will be joining me for one in late June. That will be an effluvium summer session.
Great.
Dave B, JJ and Alex, any thoughts on Ganymede? I actually did a first impression on Ganymede, and I'm kind of on the fence about it. I find it really fascinating, but not to my taste. Alex, what are your thoughts on Ganymede?
I have tested it. I won't say I didn't like it. I will say I was underwhelmed, unimpressed. If I had to consider all the hype it received, I thought it was much better. I think, yes, it has a peculiar kind of mineral feel of my skin.
I experienced that as well, yeah.
But that's the only thing that makes it stand out, because for the rest, to me, it's quite generic. Very generic, very mass-appealing fragrance, which, of course, means it doesn't smell bad. It smells good, but it's nothing to write home about, nothing that stands out apart from that strong mineral note that comes off my skin. That if you like it, that's it. If you don't particularly care for it, like I didn't, unimpressed.
I didn't like the use of Suederol very much. I'm not a fan of Suederol, unless it's dosed in a smaller amount. Sometimes it works for me. It's very forward. It just does something to me. It makes me angry. It kind of like it elicits like a visceral response of like rage. It's kind of like, I don't know how to explain it. Like I have something called misophonia, where if I hear people and they're eating loudly, then that is a tough. It elicits that same feeling. Like the smell of Suederol, if it's really loud, it does the same thing to me. I need to scrub it off. I can't deal with it. It's kind of crazy. That's why I can't do mukbang or ASMR. Like if people are doing that stuff when they're eating food, I got to turn that off. I don't enjoy it.
Yeah. The noise of someone eating loud is obnoxious from everyone, I think.
Yeah, I can't do it.
I heard a lot of people compare Ganymede to the one sample I sent you from Essential Perfume Bois Imperial, which I don't know, you didn't like that. I know you like the opening. I didn't really get it. I think that Bois Imperial is more similar to Tom Ford's Grey Vetiver than to Ganymede. A little more sparkly, more lively than Grey Vetiver, not as classy, but I don't really see a lot in common with Ganymede.
Yeah. I when I sampled that, I didn't really find them particularly all that similar either. Alejandro, thank you for the coffee. That means we're going to extend this to just 10 more minutes. The coffee bars now, I mean, it's not going to guarantee that we go anymore because I actually have a firm ending at about 5 to 8 p.m. anyhow. But thank you so much. If anybody does want to contribute to coffee anyways, by all means, please do. But we'll be ending in about 10 minutes. But thank you so much. Really appreciate that. We're going to look at a couple more chats here. Anton Constantinou, in a way, wearing vintage scents is a bit like evoking the dead. I wonder if people subconsciously feel like they've encountered ghosts when they smell old frags that people from their past wore. Now, that's something to think about. Yeah.
Well, I think if you smell Van Cleef & Arpels Pour Homme, maybe you can imagine meeting a ghost, because that smell really like an old castle.
It does feel that does feel a little ghostly. Not one particular person, and certainly nobody that I recall ever having worn it in my past who is now deceased. But I don't doubt that there could be some sort of vivid imagery from smelling certain fragrances that you might associate with a loved one who has since passed, because of the strong connection that we have with our sense of scent and our limbic system and all of the memories that we store in our brain, that it could conjure up memories that seem vivid, almost like the person might be there with you. So, but I don't doubt, I'm not a skeptic. I don't doubt that there is a possibility that there is communication from those who have left this dimension or this earthly life. I know that there's no way of proving it either way, but it's an interesting topic to consider. I actually feel quite inspired by that. Thank you very much, Anton. Styx 10.2 Schlonghammer Dunhill edition does it better. I'm assuming does it better than Cacharel. It's another good one. I like the two of them for different reasons. Slightly different versions of a spice heavy aromatic with some citrus. The top and mid of Ganymede are interesting. The dry down leaves a lot to be desired. Yeah, I can agree with that. I think that was the toughest part that I had with it. I was really shocked when I tried Violet Volinka from Hermes, the Christina gel, and she used a boatload of Suederol in that. I just couldn't, and I love Violet, but there's a lot of Suederol in it, and I just couldn't get past it. I was pretty sad about that. Yeah.
Though she's a great perfumer, in my opinion. She's a very good one. Christina gel.
Christina gel. Oh, generally speaking, yeah.
I think Eau de Citron Noir to me is great.
Dave B, Cacharel pour l'Homme and
no, I think Bois Imperial and Ganymede are made by Kenton Biche.
Oh, Kenton Biche. Okay, I gotcha. I thought he was talking about the other two here. Panel's thoughts on Acqua di Parma Profumo. Too old-fashioned? What do you think?
Acqua di Parma Profumo?
Yeah.
Acqua di Gio Profumo, maybe.
Yeah. I don't think it's too old-fashioned. It's pretty classic, right?
Yeah, but
what is the Profumo, though?
Acqua di Parma does not have a Profumo.
Yeah, I'm kind of confused by that. Like, do you mean the original Acqua di Parma or
Acqua di Gio Profumo, probably from Armani?
Yeah, Acqua di Gio Profumo.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Acqua di Gio Profumo to me is a fantastic.
Tripler, you may want to clarify that if you mean Acqua di Gio or Acqua di Parma and just something else from the house or the line.
Acqua di Gio Profumo is a fantastic scent. I think it's the best flanker from the Acqua di Gio line. They made a great job by keeping the DNA, keeping the freshness, but adding a lot of depth with wet patchouli and incense.
So Tripler says that there is a Profumo, and I don't doubt it. Tell us a little bit about it, Tripler. That's actually a house that I haven't really dug into because I had to draw a line. I had to draw a line in the sand somewhere. I can't delve into everything. I was like, I can't.
I have many Acqua di Parma, but I have Colonia Intensa, Colonia Essenza, Colonia Assoluta.
Oh, there is an Acqua di Parma Profumo here. And it is, now I know why this sounds vaguely familiar, because I think Rachel mentioned this. It's a floral that was originally marketed to women in a very distinct bottle, and it's very rose and ylang-ylang and jasmine heavy.
Okay.
And wow, there's a 5-ounce bottle of it being sold for $423.99. I think this is something that was perhaps discontinued some time ago. It is compared to Mitsuko.
I didn't know it existed.
It's compared to Jubilation 25, compared to Mitsuko. Yeah. Yeah.
By the
Interesting.
way, speaking of Osmotech, I also have Mitsuko.
Oh wow, the Osmotech sampling of Oh, so you're actually able to, when you go to Osmotech, they will allow you to sample on a test strip these.
I think so.
Oh wow.
If you're lucky, I think so.
Mm.
Because they had the stand of Excence. And they had all these small bottles, splash bottles, in which they put the blotter in. And I think they are all the originals or reproductions of the originals, but that smell exactly the same. Probably are not the original bottles decanted into the small ones, but the perfumers have made a perfect reproduction of the exact smell with the exact ingredients of the original recipe, the original formula. And that's what we could smell. Both me and Pep went downstairs where they had their stand, and we ravaged to it. We smelt everything: Fougère Royale, Après L'Ondée,
Oh wow.
Vol de Nuit. They had also modern things like Acqua di Gio. They had Pinot Silvestre, the original from 1955. It was quite an experience. Well, one of the highlights of the Excellence, because I mean, smelling these originals has been quite more quite more interesting than smelling 90% of what was on display. Though there have been some very nice things.
Rachel, it definitely was. It was a very spirited conversation. It was great to have Chris back, and hopefully, we can have Lanier coming, joining Effluvium, hopefully in the next few weeks. Hope everything is okay with him. I know what it's time for. It's time for the outro theme music. So I'm going to read off the guests who are coming up here. Next week we have Gabe Oppenheim, and my co-pilot will be Dave Callie's Groom Room, and there's room for a fourth. I don't know, Rachel, if you're available, just give me a ring, call me. 418, April 18th, we have Sebastian Furtado, Shelter and Perfume. April 25th, James Houdini SOTD of Les Odorants, the podcast. And I've also added Fliss Sniff Stuff, also from Les Odorants. She will be with us as well. That will be at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Effluvium, an earlier Effluvium, so just be prepared for that. May 2nd, to be decided. We are working on perhaps having Dahlia, the perfume Dahlia there, but it is yet to be decided. May 9th, Mesquio Parfums, Marie-Pierre Blanchette, with
great.
Pep will, of course, be in line as the creative director for the house, and Rachel will be my co-host for that. May 16th, Pia Long, and she's a great perfumer. Wonderful. Did you have a chance to meet Pia? She was at Excellence.
No, I met Marie and Pep.
Oh, wonderful. May 23rd, Roberto Dario, perfumer Roberto Dario, and Diane of St. Clair Scents, Vermont-based independent perfumer. And then May 30th is the finale before summer recess with Mark, Robes 08. So Alex and I are going to take this backstage. It's been wonderful, everyone. We will see you again next week with Gabe Oppenheim. And until next time, please be well and take care. Be kind to everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
And ending.